here today for and diplomacy and corporate communications web series of the multilateralism and diplomacy for peace. And aside that, I would say it's my honor, absolute honor, to also let us know that we are also celebrating and marking our anniversary for Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference. Okay. If you can hear me, you know you all can hear me. Multilateralism and diplomacy for peace. And aside that, I would say it's my honor, absolute honor, also let us know that we are also celebrating and marking our anniversary. Can we hear me? Isn't it okay? Or I can hear myself. You can hear me, you know you all can. Well, I'll keep admitting some persons here. We'll have a number of persons joining, so we'll keep admitting them. But I want to really welcome everyone here and to let you know that we are also celebrating our anniversary. This time last year, April 24th, we had our inaugural conference here in Port Harcourt at the American Corner. It was such a delight. It was an amazing time. I believe we are going to be having quite a lot of highlights from that meeting here today. And it's my delight to let us know that we are also commemorating the International Day of Diplomacy, of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, also together with our anniversary. But right before we get into the session and before we probably go live on YouTube, because we would be streaming this live on YouTube, I would like to welcome every one of us. If you're here tonight and you know you're excited about tonight's conference, let me see your fire emojis, your favorite emojis. Keep sending them in. If you're here and you can hear me, let's see your favorite emojis. I can see Adebola, Mr. Adebola. Thank you very much. Okay, Oluwa Sheyidayo, amazing. All right, that's great. That's great. That's great. Let me get that. Let me get that. If you're here and you can hear me, let me get your favorite emojis and let's know you're here with us and you're excited about today. So we are going to do something real quick. Who knows the theme for this year's International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace? Yeah, we have the theme. Kindly unmute and let us know. Okay, Priscilla says yes. So Priscilla, kindly unmute. What's the theme for this year's Multilateralism, International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace? Priscilla, are you there? All right, so when I say International Day of Diplomacy, of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, I want to see us typing uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. Uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. Uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. April 24th, International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Uniting for a sustainable, peaceful, and sustainable future. All right, let me see that coming in. Let me see that coming in. Let me see that coming in. Uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future.
Good to go. We started now. We're live. Yeah, we're live.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Jonathan Morgan, uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. Priscilla, uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. Let me see that coming. We have a number of people here. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Once again, it's such an honor and a delight to welcome you all to Diplomacy and Corporate Communications web series in commemoration of the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. And we all know the theme for this year. It is Uniting for a Peaceful and Sustainable Future. So I want to officially welcome you all here to today's web series. I believe there are policy experts here, there are business executives here, we have youth, we have change makers, we have influencers here, we have NGOs here represented here. And it's such a delight to officially welcome us to Diplomacy and Corporate Communications web series. Right ahead, we'll be moving right ahead to our convener in person of Mr. John Best Uche, who will be giving us the open address. Please, if you're excited to have him doing this, let me get your fire emojis. Let's see the expression. Please welcome him with your favorite emojis. Okay, yes, I can see that coming. Let's keep it coming. Let's keep it coming. Your favorite emojis.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tabitha. Thanks a lot. Many thanks for holding on. Of course, an amazing human you are. A very amazing team member that anybody could actually wish to have or would actually wish to have. It's just so beautiful having you leading us in the capacity of the head of corporate communications of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference. And yes, distinguished guests, esteemed partners, members of the diplomatic community, representatives of government and international organizations, thought leaders, colleagues, gentlemen of the press, and of course, participants across the world. It is with great honor, deep responsibility, and a sense of purpose that I welcome you all to this special edition of the Diplomacy and Corp as we join the global community in commemorating the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace as recognized by the United Nations. Now, permit me to begin with a thought that I'm so, passionate about. Do not wait for big things to happen. Make big things happen. Starting small is the strategy. All right. This is not a quote. It's not just a quote. It is a philosophy. And today it speaks directly to the urgency of our collective responsibility in shaping a more peaceful and cooperative world. This global observance reminds us that in an increasingly interconnected world, no nation thrives in isolation. The challenges we face, like conflict, climate change, economic inequality, and social instability, demand coordinated multilateral responses rooted in dialogue, mutual respect, and strategic communication. The designation of April 24 by the United Nations is not merely symbolic. It is a call to action. It reinforces the need for nations, institutions, and individuals to recommit to diplomacy, not as an hour peace building, sustainable development, and global progress. However, as we reflect globally, we must also introspect locally. Across many parts of Africa and other developing nations or regions of the world, a critical gap persists, and that is a gap in the understanding, appreciation, and application of diplomacy and effective communication. Too often, diplomacy is misunderstood as weakness, and constructive dialogue is replaced with aggression, misinformation, or even silence. This perception is not just a communication problem, it is a development problem, because without diplomacy, there is no trust. Sustainable progress will be a mere wish on paper. This is where
because
this
it's
is where
Kindly stay muted, Mr. Abel. Kindly stay muted. Thank you very much. Just kindly stay muted. Mr. Abel, kindly mute, kindly mute. Thank you very much. All right, sir, go ahead.
All right, so talking about, I said without collaboration, sustainable progress will be a mere wish on paper. This is where our work becomes both relevant and urgent. Now, I want to briefly talk about, the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, what we are, who we are. Now, the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference is a forward-looking, impact-driven platform committed to raising a generation. We're so sorry about that. All right.
Comment, please kindly mute.
Now, we exist to bridge the gap between potential and preparedness. Through conferences, capacity building programs, and strategic engagement, Dccc creates a dynamic ecosystem where students, young professionals, policymakers, and industry experts converge, not just to learn, but to engage, collaborate, and lead. Our work is firmly aligned with global priorities, particularly the Sustainable Development Goals, quality education, decent work and economic growth, then peace, justice, and strong institutions and partnerships for the goals. That is SDGs 4, 8, 16, and 17, respectively. But beyond alignment, we are driven by a deeper vision to position Africa not just as a participant in global diplomacy, but as a powerful voice shaping it. Today, I make a deliberate and strategic call to key stakeholders in every sphere of human endeavor to own up to the global and collective responsibility. To governments and policymakers, invest in diplomatic education and communication capacity. Strengthen institutions to promote dialogue, negotiation, and international cooperation. Now, to the international organizations and development partners, we enjoin you to collaborate with platforms like ours, Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, to scale impact. Then, number 2, support initiatives that equip young Africans with the competencies required to engage meaningfully on the global stage. Now, to academic institutions, integrate practical diplomacy and strategic communication into learning systems. The future demands more than theory. It requires application. Then to the media, like we have them on this call tonight, champion responsible communication, shape narratives that promote peace, unity, and informed discourse. To the private sector and corporate leaders, we encourage you to recognize that diplomacy is not limited to government. It is a critical leadership tool in business, partnerships, and global expansion. People across Africa and the world. It is in your hands. Prepare for it, engage with it, then lead through it. At Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, we are not just cooperatives and creating a movement, conversations, a movement that transforms young people into global actors. In closing, as we commemorate this important day, let us move beyond celebration to commitment. Let us choose dialogue over vision, understanding over assumption, collaboration over isolation. And most importantly, let us move from intention to action, because the future of diplomacy will not be defined by declarations alone, but by the deliberate actions we take today. Thank you very much, and do have a beautiful experience here tonight on the occasion of International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. I see amazing individuals on this call. I see my leaders, my bosses, my mentors, role models on this call, and I cannot just mention all of them, but I have Professor Mfon Ekpotu. I have her here on this call, and it's quite a privilege to have her on the call. I have Dr. Chidaka Nyemeze, who was a one-time president of the Nigeria Library Association, River State Chapter. We have a lot of persons. Dr. Mercy Bello Abu is here on this call with us. We have a lot of media personalities here. Dennis of Nigeria Info. We have the people, Pastor Mogaji He's on this call. He's joined since, and we would even be having him to, we would like to give him the mic to just speak to us about for about 2 minutes, because he's quite he's hooked up somewhere, that is, and he's stuck up somewhere, actually, so to say. So he would have to allow him, to take his goodwill message now, and afterwards, we'll move forward. I mean, Tabitha, please take note. We'll move straight to the next thing, which is going to be the first presentation by our guest speaker, our keynote speaker here. We will be joining from the United Arab Emirates. She's already here, and very soon we'll be having her. But now let's have Pastor Mogaji speak to us. Tabitha, over. Tabitha, you're unmuted. Kindly unmute yourself. Okay.
Thank you very much, the convener, Mr. John Best Uche. It is indeed the call to explore diplomacy, and that is going to be done through action. Thank you for this very warm, open address. But we'll move right ahead and move over to Pastor Mogaji to give us his goodwill message. Thank you.
Thank you. A reflection on the importance of multilateralism and collaborative leadership in today's global landscape. Okay, thank you, Mr. John Best, lead and convener, Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, for the invite. Greetings to the panelists, guests, and all the participants. I am not a student of diplomacy, neither am I a diplomat. However, I'm a lover of social sciences and have developed keen interest in world affairs. I participated in several quiz competitions in my secondary school days, and also was part of the major champions in the Bauchi State competition for quiz in the late 80s. Now, this background is important for me to guarantee a soft landing if there is a drag within my contribution to the discourse by the authorities on the field. April 24 is annually observed as the International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. This is to promote the use of diplomacy, negotiation, and international cooperation to resolve conflicts and maintain global peace. As is usually echoed within international diplomacy, the day is established by the United Nations on December 12, 2018. The day reaffirmed the UN Charter goal to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. There is no better period, ladies and gentlemen, than now to hold this kind of gathering. A period being confronted with issues, disputes, concerns in need of global attentions that need to lead to solutions. There are quite a number of challenges we are facing globally today, from climate environment to conflict, humanitarian crisis, food poverty, health and diseases, economic inequality and stability, especially the multidimensional issues between Iran, US, and the rest of the world. And that has affected the oil price because of the situation in Strait Hormuz, where the tunnel, the passage between the Gulf states to be able to transport cargoes to move oil around the world. And because of the issue of oil prices, a lot of commodities and services prices have really gone up. So we need peace. So social and political issues are there, technological disruptions are there. These are challenges confronting us worldwide. And ladies and gentlemen, there is need for collective and collaborative global leadership drives to address these issues. And I believe that this discourse tonight will address some of these. Now, collective and collaborative leadership need to emphasize dialogues, compromises, and shared responsibilities as essential strategies to reforming existing international structures to make it more inclusive and effective in a multipolar world. Why should this be the major assignment? I just want to highlight a few. We need to address transboundary crisis, maintain economic stability. And what I also want to quickly propose, the 3 C's approach, and that is multilateralism functions through cooperation, compromise, and collaboration, and less of dispute and fighting and wars around the globe. So collaborative leadership and reform will be able to achieve the following: reform global governance, inclusive decision-making, build trust. Then, at the end of the day, multilateralism as a hub for coordination of relations among 3 or more nations based on common principles, where we can be able to decentralize United Nations and their goals. Since 1945 to date, United Nations has been a lame dog of the US and the Western world and the superpower. So the issues of what United Nations can do has not been effective. What do I want to see, or what are we encourage us that we should see within the next future? Is it possible for India, North Korea, South Korea, and China to be deeply together in the spirit of multilateralism? Is it possible for us to see Eritrea and Ethiopia, because of the Sahara conflict in the Gulf part of, the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda? Is it possible for us to see these little communal countries coming together to form a bloc without the intervention of the United Nations? Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this discourse will add value to the growth and development of collective collaboration among nations, leading to annexing the latent values and benefits in a situation that we have found ourselves. So I wish all the panelists and the discussants a very pleasant time. It is my pleasure to be part of this program. Thank you very much. Mogaji Adebola is my name. I live in Port Harcourt. Thank you.
Thank you for the goodwill message. And this dialogue is critical in today's about when people stop speaking, then I think silence breeds in misunderstanding. But then when the world keeps speaking and the world keeps having conversations around diplomacy, then we definitely have a sustainable and a peaceful world. Thank you very much, Mr. Mogaji. Thank you so much. All right, well, Mr. John Best, do we have your audience? Should we move over to our guest speaker? All right, thank you so much, everyone. If I still have my people right here, let me get in, let me have our favorite emojis. And if you can hear me, let me see your response to that. Type that on the chat box. We can hear you. And if you're with me, all right. Thank you so much. So we're moving right ahead to the next on our schedule. And the next on our schedule is one of the major reasons, the very important reason why we are here today. And it is to have our first speaker for the evening to speak to us on communicating in conflict, understanding the complexity that shapes diplomatic communication. And the person that will be speaking to us right here is Ms. Mantes Queenet Muchwa. It's my honor to bring to the floor our speaker for today, Mantes Queenet Muchwa. I'll just take a short brief of her bio. She is a strategy consultant, development practitioner, entrepreneur, speaker, and global African studies scholar who is working at the intersection of governance, leadership, and African. She's the founder of a organization focused on institutional strengthening and leadership capacity building across the continent. She's also the founder of U-Motu, an initiative that platforms designers and creatives from the continent in global spaces. With over 9 years of experience in democracy, rights, and governance, Mandate has led initiatives that amplify the voices of women, youth, and marginalized communities. Her work has spanned organizations including Magaba Network, the International Republican Institute, the Women's Institute for Leadership Development, and the Southern Africa Human Rights Centers Network, among others. She has served on several African and global boards, including Generation Democracy, the Zimbabwe Coalition on Debt and Development, the African Women's Leadership and Youth Network, and Muka Upenye Integrated Youth Academy. Mandate is currently pursuing a master's degree in diplomacy and international relations at the Africa Institute. She holds an MSc in African Studies from the University of Oxford and a BSc in Psychology from the University of Zimbabwe. She's also the producer and host of the Resistance Bureau and the Mandate Show. Fellow diplomats, professionals, business executives, it is my absolute honor to bring to the floor our speaker, Mandate Mulshwa. Please, with enough excitement, with a round of applause. I would need to see those applause right there on the chat box. Please, let's bring
Tabitha, thank you.
Let's have our guest.
All right, thank you so much, Tabitha. Tabitha, you almost murdered the name. I'm sure Mantate would have to. I would actually advise or suggest Mantate would have to sue you so that you know how to pronounce the name. The name is Mantate. Mantate Queen. Hi, Mantate.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much for this great opportunity to join all of you on this International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. As already mentioned, it's anchored around the idea of uniting for peaceful and sustainable future. So my commitment today is just to reflect on communication within conflict situations, especially within the context of diplomacy. And I want to start this conversation within this idea that I think is becoming more and more important. And that is to say, in times of conflict, communication is not just about explaining what is happening, but it's also about it being a part of what is happening. It's shaping how people understand events, how they respond, and even how conflicts evolve. And so for many people, especially those that are not necessarily in the front lines, communication is how they experience the conflict itself. So we get to think about conflict or communication within conflict as a tool of power and not just information. So when you get a crisis unfolding, when governments are giving updates, it's not just giving updates, they're actually making very strategic decisions about communication, because communication does at least 4 things in my view. The first one is the fact that it does provide a certain level of stability internally, because people are anxious, they're very uncertain around that conflict situation. So what governments do is they communicate to reassure people, to calm people, but also to maintain order. The second thing that communication does is that it signals to the external community or to the external network. So other countries are watching very closely. And so every statement that is made becomes a signal of intent, of capability, and sometimes restraint. So when governments communicate, there is something that they're trying to tell the world, especially about their capability to manage situations, their ability to provide for their citizens, whether it's peace or at least some sort of cushion for the economy and things like that. And then the third thing that it does is that it protects legitimacy. You've seen governments actually using communication to show that they're in control, to show that they're acting responsibly and also within international norms. So you also then come and see in these institutions like the United Nations coming in as a reference point for like legality, cooperation, and justification. So a lot of the language that you see, it's a language that is really built around the idea of showing a sense of control, responsibility in action, and also staying within the requirements of the international norms. And the last thing that I think communication within conflict does is that it actually reshapes the narrative, because whoever defines the story often shapes the response. And what that looks like in practice, for example, when you think about the recent tensions in the Middle East, you could actually observe very different communication styles from different countries. There are some countries that were speaking very calmly in measured tones, they were emphasizing stability. There were some countries that were projecting strength and readiness, and there are others that focused on diplomacy and de-escalation. And then you also have some countries that did all of these different things at the same time. And I do think that these are not not just random differences in how countries are choosing to, manage or do their communications, but also it's reflecting the political priorities of those countries, the regional positioning of those particular countries, and also desired international reactions. And so it's very important when you think about it that at every level is communication that is aimed at different audiences at the same time. And then the other thing that is very interesting to think about is the idea of silence, is the idea of timing, but also language in how it's used within conflict situations to anchor communication. I think one thing that we don't talk about enough is the fact that it's not really just about what is said, but it's also really a conversation about what is not said and when something is said and how it is actually said. So sometimes you can see a delay in communication creating anxiety. You can see a rushed statement actually creating confusion. And sometimes a poorly chosen word can escalate tension. In some instances, you see governments deliberately staying silent. And it's not always just because, they don't know what to say, but it's actually thinking about the fact that speaking too early can close off diplomatic options. And so communication within that space is not just about expression, but it's also about calculation, right? And then the other thing that I think is very interesting to think about when we think about communication within conflict situations is the shift, because governments are not necessarily in control of the narrative. And this is very interesting to think about now in the age of AI, right? There was a time when governments and traditional media had this stronghold over information, and that's not the case today. So you are finding a situation where communication is very decentralized. It's coming from, activists that are documenting events in real time. It's coming from journalists and independent media. It's coming from diaspora communities across the continent, as well as young people online who are interpreting and sharing what they see. And all of this is happening within the context of technology. And a very big case in point is artificial intelligence and its capabilities, right? And so what we're seeing here is that we're seeing actors that are not passive, but they're actually actively questioning official narratives, and they're producing alternative accounts of the conflict and the experiences of people within those spaces, as well as shaping global conversations. And one of the things that already comes in, like I mentioned, in one of the players that are in this conversation, the diaspora voice, it's very, very important that we think about it when we think about communication in times of conflict, because across Africa, we've got a lot of people that are outside the continent that are existing as diaspora, myself included. And so what we see the diaspora communities do is that they often translate local realities that are happening in their countries, that they get to find out, whether it's through the online spaces that they're in, but also through the conversations that they're having with their families and their friends and the people on the ground. They translate that local reality into global conversation. They're actually influencing how conflicts are actually discussed in other countries and the spaces that they occupy, but they also help to put pressure on policymakers internationally. So when you think about this, you're already saying that when you think of communication within a conflict zone, it's actually not restricted to that space, the geography of the conflict. It's actually going beyond the borders. And by that nature, it's very transnational. And the other thing that I always think is important in how we think about communication is the fact that, as I've already explained in this context, communication is a very contested space because there are all these actors, it's a very complex, it's a very interesting space because it's different groups that are trying to decide what is happening, and they're deciding whose voices are heard and the influence on what the truth looks like. And this tends to happen very quickly, especially now in the age of AI. It's actually faster than diplomacy can catch up. I've seen a lot of instances where embassies are struggling to keep up because communication actually comes from the people, from the audience, from these different places before they come from these institutionalized spaces. So you find that a single piece of content, for example, can actually mobilize people to protest in that moment of conflict. It can shift public opinion, or it can trigger international reactions. And the other thing that's important is that once a narrative takes hold, it's very difficult to change it. So that's something we think about when we think about all of this complexity. And then the other thing that's very important, and this is true for any form of communication, right? We need to think about the feedback loop where we're asking the question, why communication can escalate conflict, right? I think when you think about communication, you already know it's a two-way street. It's not just one area sending out messaging. It's also like the reflection that comes from wherever the information is going. So communication in that sense is a feedback loop. You've got the government communicating, but you also have people responding to the government. You also have other actors reacting to those responses. And then you also have governments adjusting their communication again. If you've seen in the different conflicts that have happened, the Middle East included, I hope you can all still hear me. Perfect.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you. Can hear
Okay.
you.
So I was just really saying that if you look at the conflicts that have happened in the past, and I know like we think a lot about the Middle East because it's the most recent one, but it's for any conflict that has happened in the past. You can see instances where a government publishes something. And it's interesting because governments in terms of conflicts are also very complex in themselves because it's the embassy communicating, it's the Ministry of Information communicating, it's the office of the president, it could be the foreign affairs minister. It's all of these different spaces communicating, and there are all of these different people engaging with it. But one thing that we've seen with conflicts is that something can go out today and people respond and there's a lot of engagement around it. The government can actually change that. It can change it for better, it can come in and correct things, but it can also change it for the worse, right? So it's thinking about that feedback loop. And what that does is really that it creates a lot of constant pressure. For example, when there's public reactions that, you know, push the government to take harder decisions or harder positions, but there's also international criticism that can force defensive messaging from the side of the government, but also there's misinformation that can trigger overreactions. And I think this is very important when you think about it because I was in the UAE when the Middle East conflict happened or the attack on Iran happened and all of the things that then happened afterwards. And I think one of the crises that we had in the first few days was just like this information that we're finding online, that you could go online and see people sharing about a building in your city that has blown up, but you're in the same city, you're walking in that city, you're not seeing a building that has blown up. So it's just really thinking about the kind of impact that misinformation would have, right? And it's not just misinformation, it's also disinformation. And so you can see already that in that sense, communication can sometimes become a source of escalation in itself, not because it intends to, but because of these various interpretations and the engagement around it. The reason why I'm giving you this foundation is because I need us to think really about what this means for diplomacy and multilateralism, right? Because the first thing is that diplomacy depends on keeping the conversation open. It depends on managing differences and creating space for compromise. What happens now is that the complexity of communication already makes that diplomatic process also very harder, right? Because positions become public very quickly, like I mentioned already. Leaders are under pressure from their populations and narratives becoming fixed that are not necessarily reflective of what may be happening, right? So once a government has said something that is very strong in public, it becomes politically difficult to shift from that. And that already shifts the space for, compromise in a diplomatic sense. So this creates a lot of challenges for institutions like the United Nations, which depend on flexibility and dialogue. And a lot of the things I'm saying are not necessarily specific to the details of particular conflicts, but I want us to use that to think about the different spaces that we're in, because as I said earlier, it's very easy for people to go to the Middle East crisis, but there's a lot of crises that have happened before. So I think it's very important that what I give you, you think about it in the context of different crises. When you get to the Q&A, if you're interested in different spaces, you can always ask questions. But I also want us to think about it when you think about conflict in Sudan, when you think about conflict in DRC, if you look about the Ukraine war, if you talk about Palestine, all of those different spaces. So when we think about all of this conversation about communication, we shouldn't just restrict it to this one region, right? And so already this is an environment that I've already painted as something of a volatile space, right? And the question we really need to ask ourselves is, what do this complex environment challenge us to think about communication? And I would offer 3 reflections. Always excited to hear what other people might have in regards to this. The first one for me is thinking about communication as infrastructure. It's not just messaging, it's actually a system that needs coordination, that needs clarity and strategic thinking. And so countries that manage communication well, they often manage the crisis better, right? And the second thing is credibility as everything. So we're in an environment where different people have access to many sources of information. So there's a lot of fragility in the trust that exists today with regards to that information. And once credibility is lost, it means that people stop listening and their alternative narratives that take over. And some of these narratives may not necessarily be reflective of what's happening, and they can have a lot of impact. It can trigger very high levels of panic in situations. It can misrepresent the positions of different states. It can also misrepresent the space in ways that affect the economy, because it's not always the politics of the incident itself, but it's also thinking about what people see and what they do in response. It's people withdrawing their money from banks. It's people running away from, certain spaces or moving their businesses somewhere. It's a lot of things that happen. And so it's really thinking about the fragility of that space and saying, how do we begin to have better communication? And I think us understanding it, even though we're not practitioners in ourselves, like we're not necessarily in the diplomatic space as ambassadors or people working within the embassy. We may not necessarily be people in government that get to be involved in this communication. But I think what it does is it gives us the right tools to understand how governments should be communicating during times of conflict, and also to identify the instances where, the communication that is coming from the side of government is not actually working. But also it pushes us to have a certain level of responsibility as well in how, we play our role in that kind of space. And the other thing about the loss of credibility is that communication becomes ineffective because no one is listening to anyone. No one is trusting what is being said. And when you think about it, like I already said, that we are all part of this ecosystem of communication. And this is very important for this audience here today, because we're coming from different spaces. You're policymakers, you're activists, you're journalists, or you're just a young person in line that's very much involved, and engaged in what's happening in the world. You are part of how conflicts are understood. And so when you send a tweet, when you write that article and publish it, when you write that reported work, or you design that program, what you're doing is you're contributing a voice that shapes narrative, you're influencing perceptions, and sometimes you're actually affecting the decisions that are made with regards to the conflict. And so, and when you think about all of this, just bringing it to a close, it's also thinking about it, okay, communication is a tool of power, but it's also thinking about communication as a tool for peace, in the sense that it can actually help to de-escalate in the same way that communication was working to escalate. It can also work in the opposite direction and actually de-escalate the conflict. But what that does is that it requires a lot of intention. It's about choosing the right words, or specific type of words. It's also avoiding unnecessary escalation, and also engaging with different perspectives and building trust over time. And I was actually very sad recently to see with the Middle Eastern conflict that in a lot of spaces, platforms of influence, positions of power, I don't think there was enough done to take responsibility in how communication was done. And I felt like at that moment, I wasn't too sure I trusted the world that we're in. So I think it's really thinking about how do we use our platforms? And it's not just us as individuals, it's also about the people in power, because they have a lot of people following their accounts. There's a lot of people listening to government statements, all of these things that are shared by official platforms. And so when there's a misrepresentation, or there's communication that doesn't reflect a certain level of responsibility, what that does is it creates this culture that makes it okay, to be problematic, and actually escalate situations. So when you begin to think about choosing words, using the platforms to de-escalate, and engaging with different perspectives that may not necessarily be yours, what that does is that it contributes to rebuilding the trust that would have been lost. And because when you think about peace is not just about agreements. A lot of times you hear that these people have signed peace agreements. You hear that there's something on paper. But peace is not just about that. It's also about how we speak to each other beyond what is written on paper. It's about how we listen and how we represent the reality of the people that we're coming from. So I think with these few words, I would say that this is my contribution to how we understand the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Because when you think about diplomacy, we tend to think it's about all those people in office, in an embassy somewhere, or in a foreign affairs ministry office somewhere. But I think diplomacy extends to a lot of us. And as a student of diplomacy, one of the things that we're taught is that diplomacy is really anchored around three things. One of them is representation. So it's really thinking about what are the values and principles that you're representing in the communication that you're undertaking. It's also about the information that you're sharing. And it's not just individuals, it's institutions, it's people that have influence. So you're a representation, whether of your country, of a region, of the values that you claim to embody. And the other thing is really about negotiation. And a big part of this is opening up the space for compromise, and also opening up the space for ideas that may not necessarily align with yours. And so with all of this, what I would want to leave with all of you is that in a world where everyone can communicate, the question is not really about who has a voice. The question for me is always, how do we use that voice in a responsible manner? And in what ways can that piece be more possible and not less? So it's almost thinking about, okay, we're seeing a world where technology is changing how we communicate. It's expanding access to information, but in the same spirit, it's actually expanding the space for people that are using spaces problematically, tools in a terrible way. So how do we begin to shift that in a better way as we think about, sustainable, peaceful futures? So this is what I want to share with you guys today. I'm very open to questions. I think someone is going to moderate them, but that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mantete. I hope I pronounced it rightly this time around.
It's better.
What an extensive session. Thank you so much for taking the dive into diplomacy and communication and how we can further explore communication in the face of conflict. Thank you for the in-depth analysis and example you gave with the Middle East world. And I think you brought the aspect of artificial intelligence, social media, and the level of communication and misinformation that is happening right in the world now, especially in faces of conflict. Thank you so much. But then I believe we have a lot of questions here. And please, if you do have a question, kindly indicate by a raise of hand. If you don't have questions, kindly indicate by a raise of hand.
All right, Tabitha, while they are raising their hands, let's take some goodwill messages while we wait for them to, raise their hands and then identify those people. We'll just take 2 questions, all right? We'll take 2 questions so that we can quickly move to the next. I mean, other questions may come later, right? They have to come later, and then we have a community that would take more questions. But let's take the first 3 goodwill messages because we have a lot of persons, a lot of respected people on this call that we need to take their messages as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, please, if you do have a question, kindly type that on the chat box. So we'll get back to your question. Ensure to type your question chat box. And it was extensive session on the topic we had. So please, if you have a question, kindly type that on the chat box. So please, let's move right ahead to goodwill messages we are having right here. The first is Prof. Mfong. Is Prof. Mfong available? Is he here?
All right. Tabitha, I wouldn't allow you to murder this name right now because you're murdering the name could just cost me a whole lot right now. Okay, just anyways. So let's have let's have Professor Mfong Ekbotu. Professor Mfong Ekbotu is a former head of Department of History and Diplomatic Study, Unique University of Port Harcourt. She's here. I mean, when I called her just a few days ago, and she was like, yeah, she has to be here, and she so encouraged us, the initiative. So let's have her give a quick goodwill message. Professor Mfong, thank you so very much for coming on this call, ma'am. Thank you. Let's have her.
You're pleasure. Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. Can you hear me?
Can.
Yes,
ma'am.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm very pleased to be here. Greetings to everybody, listeners, esteemed colleagues. I've seen some of my colleagues, Professor Njoko, I think I saw him, the future leaders, viewers that would watch later on. Thank you for the opportunity to share a goodwill message on the significance of multilateralism and collaborative leadership in our global landscape. In an era defined by interconnectivity, interconnected destinies, shared challenges, you cannot discount the principles of multilateralism and collaborative leadership. And they are not just merely diplomatic tools, but the very foundation of our collective survival and progress. Multilateralism reminds us that no nation, however powerful, can thrive in isolation. It encourages countries to unite, share resources, coordinate efforts to tackle issues that cross borders. such as geopolitical divisions, climate change, pandemic, poverty, insecurity, digital governance, and the likes. Collaborative leadership, on the other hand, embodies the very essence of multilateralism. It emphasizes inclusivity, empowerment, and accountability. Now, the question would be, how can the youth tap into this? What role can the youth play? And youth can actually play a very transformative role in strengthening multilateralism and collaborative leadership in today's world. Their energy, their innovation, their global outlook, it gives them and makes them uniquely positioned to push for reforms and inclusivity in international governance. Now, you have case studies from Africa, from Latin America, from global networks that illustrate the significant roles and impact of young people on multilateralism and collaborative leadership. And they do this, they make this impact through advocacy, technological innovation, and cultural engagement. You take, for example, the Friday for Future movement, also known as School Strike for Climate, initiated by Greta Thunberg in 2018. It has galvanized millions globally and influenced United Nations climate negotiations and prompted governments to adopt more ambitious carbon reduction targets. In Kenya, you have youths leading a digital governance initiative, and they are shaping discussions on AI regulations and cybersecurity at international forums. You look at the ECOWAS Youth Initiative that has empowered young people from Nigeria and Ghana to mediate local conflicts and foster regional stability and collaborative leadership within the ECOWAS organization. And what of the Nigerian youth in creative industries that are shaping and expanding Nigeria's soft power and fostering cultural exchanges and strengthening diplomatic ties? These are all clear indications of ways that youth can impact on multilateralism and collaborative leadership. Even the UN, as the foundation of modern multilateral framework, acknowledges the significance of involving youths in all decision-making processes. And you look at the United Nations Next Generation Fellows Program, and it equips young leaders with skills to effectively engage with global institutions while also empowering them to become impactful leaders at local, regional, and international levels. However, despite this increased and acknowledged need for multilateralism and collaborative leadership in today's world, these principles are facing lots of strain. It has come under strain from fractured geopolitics, rising nationalism, institutional legitimacy crisis. When you look at what is happening with breakups of geopolitical fractures, you have the BRICS versus G25. Then you look at what is happening with US and NATO and the Greenland crisis. What this does is that all these breakups, all these geopolitical fractures, all this rising nationalism is undermining global consensus and putting a strain on multilateralism and collective and collaborative leadership. It is because of this that at the 56th World Economic Forum annual meeting, otherwise known as Davos 2026, global leaders emphasize that collaborative leadership is the only way to address geopolitical rivalry, amongst other global challenges that we are facing in the world today. Institutional organizations such as the UN, the EU, ECOWAS, AU, they're all being confronted with eroding confidence in the face of ineffective response to global crisis. And some of the causes of this ineffectiveness is this rising nationalism, this competing powers, this fragmentation. It is not allowing for confidence because everybody's having their own agenda. So it's kind of eroding the ability of multilateral frameworks and platforms to effectively address global challenges. And then you also look at the fact that the traditional forms of multilateralism is state-centric. You know, you look at the structure of the United Nations and how it is, paying such strict attention to the laws and up-down, not bottom-up, approach. Now, it is this that has continued to show the ineffectiveness of these international institutions and organizations. And what this has done is that as the states are beginning to prioritize their domestic agenda over global cooperation, the traditional framework of multilateralism is fading, is crumbling. And it is this that has kind of led this growing challenge of nationalism, geopolitical competition, inadequacies of multilateral platforms. It is this that has led to the emergence of a new type of multilateralism, and that is networked multilateralism. And what is this? It offers a more flexible, inclusive, and efficient way to solve complex interconnected challenges. It is an approach that engages state and non-state actors in problem solving. It engages governments with civil societies, international organizations, private sectors, local authorities to effectively address global challenges that unilateral action cannot resolve. I'm not going to waste too much time because I was given like 2 minutes or thereabout. So as I come to the end of this goodwill message, what I would like to say is today is the International Day for Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. As we reflect on this day and its meaning, the urgent need for nations to work together through dialogue, cooperation, shared responsibility for global challenges. Let our voices rise, not as echoes of division, but as harmonies of unity. We need to raise our hands, join our hands together, not in rivalry, but in partnership. Today, April 24th, is a day that reminds us that nations strive, that no nation strives in isolation, and global challenges require collective efforts. And multilateralism and collective leadership are not options, but essential in today's world. Thank you.
That multilateralism.
Multilateralism.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Umfon. Ekwotu, thank you so very much for this beautiful and quite insightful goodwill. I mean, just for those joining, you're welcome once again. And I would like to inform you that this program is being streamed on our official YouTube channel. So immediately after this call, you could revisit this conversation on YouTube, and trust me, you would get a whole lot more than you are even getting now, because it feels like it's transient, but because we do not want, because of the importance, because of the significance, because of the relevance of this conversation, we decided to make it readily available anytime for anyone to revisit it. And that is the reason we are actually streaming it on YouTube. And would encourage you to visit our YouTube channel, and you get to see other contents, even more than you can even imagine right now. Okay, thank you once again, Professor Umfon. We have a lot of persons that will need to have the goodwill message. We're going to take 1 or 2 more, and then we'll have a special spoken word performance that will be, speaking to us more like advocacy by one of Nigeria's finest spoken word artists, doing so well, award-winning actually, I must say. All right, but before we do that, Tabitha, have you got any questions in the chat box for Mantate? Have you got any questions for Mantate? Please,
No
could you
questions
confirm
yet.
that you
No
have
questions
questions? No questions yet? Okay, I think in the next few minutes, let's hope that we get questions for her and then she will respond to them. We understand that. Mantate, please bear with us. We understand that you need to be, off the call because of time difference. You are quite ahead of us, about 3-4 hours ahead of us. You are, it means it's quite late at your end there. We are privileged to have you. Thank you so much. Okay, very quickly before we have the spoken word performance, we'll be having Mrs. Chioma Ezenwafo of Nigeria Info. She'll be speaking to us a minute or two, a goodwill message as a media person. After her, we'll have immediately Mr. Ignatius Chukwu, a veteran publisher and editor with Business Day newspaper. He'll be coming immediately after Mrs. Chioma Ezenwafo. And afterwards, we'll have Professor Ezedike Uzoma of Department of Philosophy, University of Port Harcourt, and we'll have Mrs. Chioma Ezenwafo. The floor, the virtual stage is yours. Thank you very much. A minute or two. Thank you. I mean, we cannot overemphasize the place of media in conversations like this. Hence, we have to, ensure that media practitioners, media experts, communications experts are part of the conversation. Yeah. Thank you very much. The virtual stage is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Very good evening to you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I can say happy diplomacy and what's the day that we're celebrating today? Multilateralism, right? Multilateralism.
Multilateralism
Yes.
and diplomacy for peace. Yeah.
Yes, so it's one that when I think about it in a poetic form, because it's coming at a time that a lot is thrown at us at the same time. I think I should start with properly introducing myself. My name is Chioma Ezenwafo, and I'm the founder of Software Media and the creator of visibilitypilot.app. And I spent 13 years on radio, having conversations, writing conversations, listening to conversations. And one thing multilateralism means to me is to keep talking. You need to keep talking. You need to keep talking. If you look at what's happening in South Africa, xenophobia rising again, you see that we need to keep talking, because the only reason we have that resurfacing again is because someone is failing to tell a better story of what other Africans are doing in South Africa. So keep talking is my message today. And even though we're giving it a big name, multilateralism, some of us will not even pronounce it, the tongue twisting there. But it doesn't just belong to treaty rooms.
All right.
Yes, it doesn't just belong to treaty rooms or people wearing suits and holding big titles. We need to strip it back and look at what it really means. It means two people who disagree deciding to stay in the room. And why is it important? I'll take you back to February 28th this year, when the very first military action on Iran landed on a school, a primary school, and children were the most victim, 120 of them. They woke up, they were trying to go to school, they barely arrived, it was in the morning. This strike hit them for what turned out to be the start of a military action, talking about the US, Israeli, Iran conflict. And somehow that has lingered ever since, until recently someone decided that it was time to talk. And multilateral talks are on. And it's important that we talk about it on a day like this, because when you think about what would have happened if someone didn't decide that we shouldn't stop talking to each other, maybe we would have seen more killings or not. or more people displaced. But then we take it to South Africa and we see that because talks may have not happened there, we see videos on social media of mothers who are not South African being denied healthcare, children blocked from going to school on the same soil that Nelson Mandela said never again. How did we get there? How did we get here? It's obviously because someone stopped talking. So we need to keep talking to each other. Just like we say to couples who are having difficulty, we say, keep talking. So we say to each country and where we do not understand each other and where we are different and where we have different truths, we say we need to keep talking. We need to not stop talking. Okay? Whether it's that we do not understand each other or that we, at the baseline, we're all humans. Okay? So I watched conversations start. I watched conversations end as a media personality on radio for 13 years. And one thing I'll tell you is this: the world has lots of good ideas, but it lacks people who can truly carry those ideas and allow them travel across languages, across borders, across history. Because when we hear that a ceasefire is on for a conflict that has taken over 100 people, it's because someone somewhere chose to keep talking. So we need more people to talk. We need more conversations like the one we're having here today. Because that choice saves lives and it helps more people understand that multiple truths can exist, that your truth does not cancel, because it doesn't cancel mine, that we can build something that we both didn't even imagine together just because we kept talking. So yes, that is multilateralism. That is collaborative leadership. And that's why today is important. That's why today is special. And that's why when I saw your invitation, I said, yes, I'll be here to have this conversation as well and to add my more than 1 cent or 2 cents, like we call it. Because it's important that those who are talking are encouraged to keep talking. Those who are still listening are encouraged to keep listening. That everyone who understands that a table is not a compromise, we all need to sit at the table. Because the table is the point. We need to stay at the table. And we need to keep talking. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Chioma Ezewafo, the media personality. Thanks a lot. Okay. Obin and Wakonobi, I understand that you are there. Very shortly, we'll have you give give us that thrill us with words, all right? Words that pierce our heart for good, words that would push us, move us, motivate us to do more, all geared towards peace building and development. That is talking about spoken word performance by Nwakonobi Obina from Abuja. Okay, we want to have Mr. Chris Ajoku. I see you there. Thank you so very much. Head of Operations, Hench Education. Thank you. Very shortly, we'll call you. Already, Professor Ezedike Uzoma. Is he here? Is he still here? Professor Ezedike Uzoma. Is he still here? I can't see him. He's off the call. He's off the call. All right. I think he may likely join again. So sorry. Professor Anthony Njoku, Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures, University of Port Harcourt. I mean, diplomacy. We can't talk about diplomacy without the language aspect of it. So let's have Professor Anthony Njoku give us a very short and brief goodwill. Thank you so very much, sir. The virtual stage is yours. I see Barrister Timi Olagunju. Barrister Timi Olagunju, thank you so much for joining. We'll have you shortly. So, Professor Anthony Njoko, are you there, sir? Kindly unmute. We can see you, but we can't hear you. If you could unmute your device. Thank you. Oh, not yet. There is an audio like button there or icon. There is a mic like icon on the screen. Kindly tap it. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, I think,
yes.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, sir.
Oh,
yes, we can hear
thanks.
you.
Welcome everybody on board on this wonderful discussion on multilateralism and diplomacy. Well, I am not an expert on diplomacy, as you have defined my field, but you cannot write away, you cannot write off my area of language and literature. It is all about multilateralism, you may call it, but we may call it in our own field multiculturalism. In a sense, is that the globe is a compendium of cultures, compendium of languages, and you need to communicate before you understand one another. So language becomes very, very imperative in multilateralism and diplomacy. Now, from the angle of literature, I must say that we believe that truth is a universal principle when there is a kind of exchange. That is to say, with your own culture at your own backyard, you cannot impose it on the world because your culture has to be crossbred with the culture of others. That is what we call cultural exchange. Before you can establish universal culture and universal truths. So that is why multilateralism becomes very important. From that end, we believe that in literature, especially in contemporary literature, that the world is a multicultural environment, a multilateral environment, and also a heterogeneous, system that we need to talk together. We need to dialogue. We need to find what some call the third place, where the truth and identity lies. Because if you don't find it, there will be no peace. Conflict continues. So in that case, before that exchange, you know that it's very, very important for all participants, all global participants, I would say all participants in the global dialogue. You must come with the spirit of give and take. That is to say, there is certain things from your own end you have to drop. And there are certain things you have to imbibe from others. That is how to establish, universal truths, universal culture, and universal principles, which multilateralism is all about. How to dialogue and have peace and resolve unending conflicts that plague humanity. So, but the problem we have is that most participants in this global dialogue, nations, organizations, states, and even non-state actors are not ready to yield, to give up an aspect of their own belief and the culture and the truth, to embrace what comes from the other person or the other system. That is the problem. That's the reason why we have a problem all over the whole world today. We have conflict. Until that is done, until people come, or rather, nations, organizations, states, and non-state actors come together and embrace that idea of give and take. Whatever is not good in your own culture, comparatively, you drop it and embrace what is you find good in the other person's culture, then that's the only way we can have peace. But eventually, or unfortunately, that spirit is not there. The spirit of multilateralism is not there. That's why we have conflict all over the whole world today. Nations are not ready to, listen to other nations. People are not ready to, see what is good in other people's. Okay, that's why we have problem. For instance, Professor made a very powerful comment today. In our world, you can see conflict all over, and that conflict was the conflict as a result of resurgence of nationalism. Everybody is talking about his own nation, his own culture, and I'm sure that that resurgence of nationalism started with the center, let me quote, the center of the world, the nation that let me not say arrogated to itself the right of the center of the world, which is America. America is the center, the most powerful. You hear Trump say the most powerful militarily, economically, and all the rest. So since Trump came on board and was talking about America, there's a kind of international awakening. Every other nation just took a step backwards to understand what's going on and prepare itself, because when America talks, the whole world listens because the power is talking. So that resurgence of, nationalism, which is started in America, is a wave. It becomes a tsunami that's touched every other nation. And I must tell you that it didn't end in nationalism. America talking about her borders, talking about immigration, American interests first before others. Good. There's nothing wrong in nationalism to say to say there's nothing wrong in nationalism, but what is happening? That nationalism, does it integrate other nationalisms, or does it integrate the ideas, the perspectives of other nations? That's where nationalism makes meaning. Nationalism is self-pride. I have this in my country. This is my country. This is who we are, and we are proud of whom we are and what we have. Therefore, you have to open your borders for others to come in and show and showcase also their own values, their own culture, the truth of their own system, so that you look at what they have that is good, look at what you have that's not working, and you now try to do what? Exchange. Now, the problem we have that nationalism. Okay, I can see you. Are you giving me time to? All right. That nationalism did not stop there. It has gone to the religious level. It is because of this resurgence of nationalism that is causing the religious conflict we have all over the whole world today. Islam and Christianity problem in the UK, in the United States, in Europe. Europe is waking up the identity, religious identity, which is the basis of their cultural and even technological identity, is getting lost or absorbed, or a kind of stolen by Muslims. That is why everywhere, all over the whole world, there's conflict right now. It's not only the conflict in Iran is the one that we can see openly, that is very open. There's simmering conflicts all over the whole world. Every nation is standing up now to keep a watch on her cultural, religious, and national identity and values. Yes, so what we need now is multilateralism. This is the right time. It couldn't have come any other better time than now. We need to keep talking, as people have said. We need to open the borders, open diplomacy, and tolerate, and exchange ideas, resolve the conflict, and see for the sake of peace, because we cannot hit up the system, the earth, and we feel that we will be safe here with all these conflicts. Any day, a country can come out of anger and release, nuclear weapons, and it causes havoc and catastrophe all over the whole world. So now we need this multilateralism. It came at the right time. This is the time we need it. And my belief that what Trump has finally accepted to talk. Let him come out with sincerity, because he said he is coming to or rather peace. Will come with the House of Equity must come with what? Clean hands. So
yes,
please, we need it right now, and I encourage all the organizers of this kind of forum to keep on hammering. We need dialogue, we need conversation, we need the exchange of ideas, we need to hear others, we need to examine different perspectives so that we arrive at central truth. We arrive at what? Principles, universal principles and universal truth, which everybody will share commonly. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so very much, Professor Njako Anthony of the Department of Foreign Languages and Literature, University of Port Harcourt. Thanks so much, sir. Okay, our next guest will be joining us very shortly, but Dr. Mercy Bello, so sorry for keeping you this long. Please kindly, if you could speak to us for a minute or two, yes, on this, and then we would have Melody. We'll have Obina Melody, that is Nwa Konobi, our spoken word performance, and followed by other goodwill messages. Please do well to bear with us, everyone on the call. All right. We really wish we can take it all straight up. All right. But we just have to take another presentation before we move further, with the goodwill messages. Dr. Mercy Bello, thank you so much, ma'am.
Oh, thank you for having me. I didn't know I was going to give a goodwill message. I just wanted to listen because I'm just coming out from a tragedy that hits me. I'm just coming in from New York. I went to bury my younger brother. So I was just relaxing. Let me hear what you guys are saying. I didn't know I was going to do this, but I was enjoying the conversation. And we cannot, as Nigerians, as Africans, we cannot say we are paying deaf ears to this particular topic, multilateralism and diplomacy in corporate governance. So thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite, because peace is something that I was just part of what happened right just 3 days ago. I experienced exactly this while in the US. So it's so apt that I have to just give my take just briefly on this, that it can affect every one of us. When we talk about, for me, it's always about inclusion. How can we be included in the scheme of things? Because if we're looking at peace, I don't want us to speak, I'm not looking at the big English or this, because I was a victim of what you are having this conversation on today. Because when we leave the shores of our country, then we experience certain challenges. It hits home. It hits home, and you feel less human because other countries refuse to see or accept you, the fact that you are also an individual from a country that has its own sovereignty. So that is why I was so interested listening to this today. Are we all being affected by this? Of course. So how can we move forward? For me, when we got to I was transiting from a particular city in the US, in Phoenix, because when Professor was talking about Trump and all of that, I'm like, me that I'm just experiencing this now. So I was traveling I was transiting from Phoenix to Fresno in California. And if anybody knows, you know the distance there. And we had an issue with our passports, our passports and all of that, with the peace issues and all. So we discussed, they call the ones with the US visa passport. Oh, you stay aside. Even the ECOWAS passport that I thought we carried the same weight to give us credibility and even make us feel like human beings was treated as if it was just like ordinary passport. I said, so in the whole of West Africa, it means that we are not even in the scheme of things. So it was challenging for me having to experience all of that. So why do we need this conversation? We need to zero it back home. How can we have this conversation, project our nation, project Africa, that we come together as one? Because whatever it is, the Western world do not care about our existence. They don't even know a lot of them. They might hear about us. They might see a lot of things about us, but how are we being treated when push comes to shove? This is the conversation, and I was just a part of that conversation that happened. So when I see South Africa, when I see Cameroon, when I see Chad, Rwanda, everyone say, oh, no, I'm not Nigerian. We are all in the same boat. We are all treated the same way. And the sooner we come together to have this conversation, how can Africa be at the center, that we project our continent as one? This will be an ongoing conversation that it might not be even in our lifetime to experience that we truly seek. But for the sake of time, I'm very passionate about it because I just experienced it. So let me not take your time. Thank you so much for having me. I hope some other time when I'm in a better frame of mind, we can have further conversation. Thank you so much. I appreciate the convener, John Best, for always pushing. You are highly appreciated. Well done. God bless you all.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Mercy Bello Abu. And we sincerely extend our condolences and do accept our condolences from for myself and my team at the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference. We pray God to give you, the fortitude to bear your loss. Thank you for joining regardless. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Obina Melody Nwa Konobi, are you ready for your
good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Obina Nwa Konobi is an award-winning, a multi-award-winning spoken word artist and poet, and he's based in Abuja. He's won numerous awards for his lyrical prowess in spoken word performances, all right, internationally and locally. And he's here with us tonight to, lend his voice to this conversation through a mighty, powerful, and indeed, mind shifting lyrics. Let's give it up for Obina Nwa Konobi for his electrifying performance tonight. Obina, the virtual stage is yours. Please, if you're excited to have Obina make his performance, use the virtual, upload and applause rather, and let's appreciate him. Please, Obina, the virtual stage is yours. Over. Thank you.
All right.
Good
evening, everybody. I would love to say happy International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. And I must say the conversation had been mind-blowing. It has been mind-opening. And I was jotting down some things. Someone said the globe is a compendium of cultures. I think it resonates with a book I was reading. It's called The Pale Blue Dot by Carl Sagan. And in that book, it was talking about how they visited the moon, and from space, they were seeing just a pale blue dots. There were no boundaries. The way some of us are talking about America building walls, China doing this, there were no boundaries, just a pale blue dot. And it's how beautiful humanity is just compounded into that pale blue dot called Earth. And it's a reason for us to live in unity. It's a big reason for us to live in unity. So I'll go into my first performance for this evening. I wrote this piece yesterday. It's called How Did We See Ourselves Before Mirrors? So I'll begin. How did we see ourselves before the invention of mirrors? Somewhere in Nigeria, a boy is searching for a future tense to teleport himself out of the present. They said his father's poverty extended beyond the diameter of time. So he inherited memories that are burning, and everything is becoming ash. How did we see ourselves before mirrors? Somewhere in Sudan, a girl is transcribing her loss at the altar of remembrance. She doesn't know which to name first: the war which took her parents, or the men who took her virginity. The heart is an electromagnetic field. It has trapped too much sorrow caused by loss, and now everyone knows about the melancholy in our names. But how did we see ourselves before mirrors? I mean, how do you sleep at night knowing that the figures on the headlines whose dreams were cut short in a battle line were also humans like you? How do you sleep at night knowing that someone's joy has become a fugitive wandering through dark alleys of uncertainties? They say a hungry man is an angry man. Our streets are the evidence that people walk around with an inner jihad. So when you talk about a peaceful and sustainable future, I wonder how possible that is when we fail to recognize the plea of others, the ordinary people who do not have access to the round tables, the ones who have seen firsthand the environmental genocide, the everyday person with no net worth in their bios, the ones with their taproots of angers running deep into the unhealed caused by neglect, the ones with the oil spillages in their communities, the ones who are gradually losing their biodiversity, the ones watching their worlds fracture into dagger-shaped shards because the algorithms do not consider them too important to be talked about, the ones who have gotten used to gunshots as background music, children whose parents could not afford pencils and crayons, so they were forced to learn the art of survival. The question remains, how did we see ourselves before mirrors? So that's my first piece. I hope it you digest it the way you want to. It's just a message. Yeah. So the second piece, what happens when nations stop shouting and start sitting? When borders become bridges, not barricades. When the loudest weapon is not a missile, but a microphone passed in goodwill. That is multilateralism. That is diplomacy. That is peace refusing to be an accident. Today, April 24th, we remember no country is an island and no problem is local anymore. Climate, no they check passports. Hunger, no they respect flag. War in one corner bleeds the whole house. So we choose the table over the trench. We choose dialogue over dominance. We choose to argue in rooms so we don't bury in graves. Multilateralism is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is saying my strength is not in how loudly I speak alone, but in how well I listen with others. Diplomacy is not delay. It is design. It is building roads before we need to run on them. From the UN halls to the village square, from Abuja to Addis Ababa, from Geneva to Gaza, peace is not made by soldiers alone. It is made by negotiators who lose sleep so children can keep theirs, by translators who turn anger into understanding, by leaders who know that a handshake can hold more power than a warhead. So on this day, we recommit to talk when it's hard, to partner when it's slow, to believe that our shared future is worth more than our separate egos. Because the world we want will not be won by one nation, one voice, one flag. It will be built by many hands at one table. Happy International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Thank you very much for listening.
Wow. Wow, please, at this point, we should give a virtual applause. Make it loud. Make it loud. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much for that beautiful spoken word performance. Nwakonobi, thank you so very much. All right. Obina, I cannot wait to have you, we can't wait to have you live on our event. I mean, the live event next year. Okay, even this year in Abuja before we come back to Port Harcourt. So this year we'll still be in Abuja and before we come back to Port Harcourt next year. So we can't even wait to have you on stage, do this live and direct and all of that. But here is, this was just quite powerful, I must say. Thank you very much. Tabitha, do we have our second speaker in the room already? Oh, is Mr. Kofi Bartels on the call? Is in the room already? I think okay, while we wait for him to come on, let's have a Dr. Mr. Chukwu, Ignatius Chukwu. Is he still here? Mr. Ignatius Chukwu is not here yet. Oh, he's off the call. Barrister Timi Olagunju, I know you just do a minute or two. Like, thank you so very much. Thank you so much. After Barrister Timi Olagunju, we have Mrs. Delight, yes, Uche Aniche, yes, Mrs. Delight Uche Aniche. While we wait for the second last speaker for tonight, that is Mr. Kofi Bartels. Before we continue with the goodwill messages, we have media persons here. They may even want to ask certain questions that we could, give answers. But then let's have Barrister Timi Olagunju quickly. Thank you. And then Mr. Chris will come up shortly.
Okay. Thank you so much for this conversation. I think this is an important conversation because conversation enriches the understanding. And also, my heartfelt sorry for Dr. Mercy's loss. I pray that the Lord grant her and her family fortitude to bear it. Now, on the subject of multilateralism and diplomacy, I will take it quickly from the perspective of power and institutions and zoom it to Nigeria to round off, right? And so, for me, multilateralism in that context of power and institution is the fragile thread that binds nations in moments of power or in moments when power alone cannot sustain peace. And diplomacy is a tool or a voice in that context. And now for Nigeria, the key question or the hard question we need to ask ourselves is, how did the giant of Africa, in quote, become so quiet, lose its voice when its citizens need a giant's voice? And I will zoom it down quickly to the context around institution. Nigeria particularly has weak institutions when it comes to the context of the subject of multilateralism and diplomacy. The institutions should be built to defend the dignity and project strengths, but they are weak. And I will give it back even to our Fourth Republic when Olusegun Obasanjo was president. You could see that there was a certain strength that our multilateral and diplomatic institution portrayed because of the kind of leader that was in office at that time, such that when he speaks, others, whether in Europe or within the African context, or even in the Americas, tend to listen. We've not had that. It has declined institutionally post Olusegun Obasanjo's presidency. And I will give a more recent context, which is, for example, look at what is happening in South Africa, right? And the xenophobia on Africans. It has always happened to Nigerians. Many Nigerians have gotten the long end or the short end of the stick for a long time. But our government, our diplomatic multilateral institutions, so weak, they don't speak up or take the necessary institutional actions. But just recently, we saw videos circulating where a Ghanaian was treated badly in South Africa, and the Ghanaian government immediately ordered or requested that the South African envoy comes to discuss the context of the situation as it is. And I trust me, with the way the Ghanaian government has taken a step, the likelihood of Ghana taking that short end of the stick happening will be quite limited than, It should. And so it is at the moment. And so we see that we have weak institutions when we come to the context of, multilateralism and diplomacy as a tool. Peace is not passive. We need to understand that logic, that peace is not passive. Multilateralism is not silence. It demands courage. The courage to engage, to challenge, to protect, to use a voice. And, we were once a country, Nigeria, where we carried on the ECOMOG peace building in Liberia and Sierra Leone, even supported the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, right? And so this is a context, a food for thought for us in this context. But I want to leave us with the concept of partner. Many of us may know the concept of partner in diplomacy, but I want to give us this description. Imagine person A and person B, right? Person A and person B are given $1 million and they are told to share it. And that if they are able to share it, they have the money. But if they do not share it amongst themselves, it simply means that they get nothing. The money returns back to the house. So person A proposes to person B, and they have 10 minutes to do this. So person A proposes to person B and says, look, we have 1 million. I will take 500,000. You take 500,000. That's fair. But person B rejects and said, no, you take 400,000. I will take 600,000. It seems unfair. But what person A did not understand was that person B has been told that if no deal happens, person B still goes home with 500,000. So you could see that the partner for person A is not the same partner with person B. Even person A may not be privy to that information. And so sometimes the context, we need to ask ourselves, what is Nigeria's partner? Sometimes Nigeria behaves in its diplomatic partner like it is Ghana or India. Whereas Nigeria is not the only country where they are crime or they are criminals, but we usually have the worst end of the stick in terms of image and perception. So our partner is not the same partner with other countries of the world, even in terms of population and travels for Nigerians. So our exposure, diplomatic partner, is not the same thing with Ghana or India. And it's important to understand this context, because if we do not understand, we will still keep playing at an institutional level in terms of multilateralism and diplomatic institutions, like we are Ghana or we are India or we are some country somewhere, whereas we have the short end of the stick. And I'll leave us with the fact that multilateralism is a test of who can protect their people when the flags are lowered. Food for thought for us. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much, sir. Thanks a lot, Barrister Timi Olagunju, for that quite insightful and thought-provoking, message there. All right. The next speaker is on the call. That is keynote speaker Kofi Bottles is on the call. We're just going to give him a minute or two to settle down. Okay? We'll give him a minute or two to settle down, and within that time, we'll be giving him to settle down while before we call him up. All right, we'll have Dr. Nyemeze. Yeah. Dr. Nyemeze, is he here? Yeah, Dr. Nyemeze, I hope. Yeah, Dr. Chidaka Nyemeze. Oh, 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 Nyemeze, I hope I got that name correctly. He is the immediate past chairperson, chairman of the Nigerian Library Society, Nigerian Library Association, that is River State chapter. So, Dr. Chidaka, 1 minute or two, kindly, and then yes, we'll introduce our speaker. And I believe after you have Mrs.
All right.
Mrs. Delight, yes, which I need to, and then we'll
All
have
right.
our speaker.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I guess you can hear me very well. Let me start by appreciating the organizers, especially Mr. John Bess, for giving me the opportunity to give a goodwill message tonight. I wish to start by saying that it is an honor to speak on this special occasion, marking the United Nations International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Well, I've listened to so many speakers, but I am going to give my speech from a librarian's perspective. As a librarian, I want to start by saying that whatever thing that happens, we have to look at information, knowledge sharing, and collaboration in promoting peace and global understanding. Meaning that for us to have peace, for us to have an understanding, a cooperation, it means people must have access to a credible information. It is believed that when people are fed with wrong information, misinformation, conflicts tends to rise. And as librarians, I want to charge all of us, because it is believed that most Africans or Nigerians don't read. And because we don't read, we don't have access to information. So for us to flow with other nations, for us to flow with other countries, we must avail ourselves the opportunity of having access to credible elections, since it is key to conflict resolution, since it is key to having an understanding with other countries. It is only when we have access to this information that we'll be able to cooperate very well with other institutions. So I want to conclude by saying that for us to have, or for us to unite for a peaceful and sustainable future, we must have access to credible information. Thank you, and God bless you all.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Chidaka. Thanks so very much, sir. Mrs. Delight, thank you very much. After Mrs. Delight, we'll have our keynote speaker, Mr. Kofi Bartels, who will be speaking to us from the side of the African Union goals and all of that agenda. Yeah, Mrs. Delight, Uche Aniche. All right.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you to John Best and all the other organizers of this program for having me on this call and affording me the opportunity of listening to other great minds who have spoken before me. Just in a minute, I would be sharing with us that as we mark this day, this special day, that diplomacy, when rooted in cooperation, becomes more than negotiation, you know? So it becomes like a bridge between differences. Multilateralism gives that bridge strength. That's its role, providing strength for that bridge. So it brings diverse voices to the table, ensuring that peace is not imposed, but collectively built and sustained. And I would like to lean in a little bit on Timi's postulation. Okay, peace is not the absence of conflict. No, it is not. And it's not also being passive, from taking his word. It is actually the presence of justice and dialogue, and of course, shared responsibility. So true diplomacy requires patience, it requires empathy, and of course, the courage to pay attention and listen, not just to the allies, but also to the adversaries as well. So I would say that while we, spend some more time talking about this, let's also understand that it's not only about just having conversations. It's about having conversations that narrows down into producing policies that can drive the lasting peace that we all seek. We may not probably have all the pieces of the piece that we are looking for coming together all at once, but we can just achieve them one part, at a time. So, and I'm speaking from the tech and innovation standpoint. A lot is already happening in terms of not just the conversation, but interventions as well from some organizations, some international organizations, finding a way to, bridge the gap between traditional business models and digital business model, in trying to bring in the digital intervention into traditional business model to see how it can be better. So there has just been in recent time a kind of drive and push in that area to say, oh, yes, we are doing amazingly well as a nation traditionally, but we can do better when we introduce digital transformation into our business model. So from the tech ecosystem, we can see that there is an aspect of that conversation that is now sweeping around the ecosystem per region. So let us say that this thing should be inclusive. Diplomacy should become inclusive. Inclusive and treated in parts. We cannot have this conversation on just the general aspect and achieve what we want, but taking a part and then making policies out of it that really begins to benefit, especially the stakeholders in that space, will make more meaning for us. So young people, emerging economies, and underrepresented voices must not just be invited to the conversation, they must help to shape it. Because in the end, peace built together in peace is that which could last for a longer time. Thank you very much for having me. I am delighted, Uche and Uche, and I really, really am grateful to be on this call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Delight, Uche Aniche. One of when you're talking about tech and innovation in Port Harcourt South region, Mrs. Delight, Uche Aniche, and the husband, Uche Aniche, they top the list through their innovation hub, Futures Fair, and all of that. And then Startup South, is it? Startup South, yes. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Startup South. Very quickly, we would have last speaker for tonight. Then before we come back to the goodwill messages, please just pardon us. would have to take this session. Immediately after this session, then would have the last set of goodwill messages, and then probably if there be questions that will be coming from some of our participants, would entertain those questions as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're, would like for you to use your virtual applause, all right, to welcome on the virtual stage our keynote speaker, the second keynote speaker for tonight, Mr. Kofi Bartels. He is a broadcaster journalist, and of course, he's also in the development space full-time. He's used journalism, broadcast journalism to advocate and, bring about change in River State, South Nigeria, and currently he's in Lagos doing so well in the development space using the broadcast journalism as a medium, and we cannot, there's not a person better to have him on this call share with us tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's make welcome on the virtual stage once again, Kofi Bartels. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, John Best. Thanks for having me on this broadcast. I can hear some familiar voices. I want to say good evening to everyone here, especially my church member, Sister Delight, Mrs. From this voice I just heard, comes from a very wonderful family. John, thank you for having me on the program, and good evening to everyone as well. I'm trying to share my screen. I don't know if you can set that.
Okay, I would make that happen.
But am I clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you. We can hear you. So I'll make you a co-host now, then you can probably share your screen. Could you confirm your ability to share the screen now? Are you able to?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Okay, just give me a second to sort this out.
All right. Okay. I think while that is on, I think let's give him a minute or two. All right. Then we use a stone to kill birds right now. While we wait for you to sort that, immediately you're up. We'll come back to you, Mr. Bartels. Let's have. Okay, he started sharing already. Okay. Good. Please, can we all confirm that we can see the screen? Use the chat box. Confirm that you can see the screen. Okay, it stopped sharing. Okay. Okay, yeah, we can see.
Yes, I can.
Great.
Okay, is it clear? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. We can see the screen as well.
Thank you very much. Because I couldn't hear myself. Okay, so let's get right into it. So basically, I would like to take us through a bit of what Agenda 2063 is, but also to speak to the 7 aspirations. I tend, not to make this as academic, but tell what I think, Africa needs to get to where it needs to be. All right. Of course, we all know the continent of Africa has been in existence from time immemorial. And of course, we know that the continent has been struggling economically. But in May 1963, African heads of state, particularly 32 of them gathered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and they signed an agreement. Now, this agreement was the Charter of the Organization of African Unity, as it was then known. So it was one of the most, important political movements in Africa and even in the world in the 20th century. This thing called the Charter of the Organization of African Unity. And at that time, of course, 1963, we had a lot of African nations gaining independence. Of course, Ghana, my home country, the first nation south of the Sahara to gain independence. Nigeria got it in 1957, 6th March 1957. Nigeria got its independence 1st October 1960, 3 years before the African OAU Charter was signed in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So this was the period of independence. And these newly independent nations had barely moved on from colonial rule. Okay, so they were looking at each other and saying to themselves, we are free countries. We need to come together. We had the likes of Kwame Nkrumah, who was a champion of a united Africa, the first and founding president of Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah was also a champion of African independence. So when Ghana became the first Black nation, or let me say the first African nation south of the Sahara to gain independence, Kwame Nkrumah championed and fought for the independence of other African countries. Okay, and you had the likes of Julius Nyerere, who was the president of Tanzania. Now, there was an ideological debate on the floor of the OAU in Addis Ababa, and indeed across the continent in Africa, between Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, who wanted United States of Africa now, not tomorrow, not 10 years from now. And the speeches are all over the internet. You can go, check it out on YouTube. It is so inspirational. Okay, he says he wanted the United States of Africa now. A United States of Africa with one government. A United States of Africa with a single military. A United States of Africa with a single currency. That was a vision of Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. Now, Julius Nyerere, very respected African independence leader. I hold him in high esteem. If you go to Tanzania, you understand why Julius Nyerere, I'm happy to have seen him, and at least when I was born, he was old on television, was a great man. But he had a different approach. Julius Nyerere had a cautious approach that, we cannot get to that United States of Africa now. Some people felt the Americans or the West were using him because they didn't want that to happen. Don't forget, the West engaged in what we call the struggle for and partition of Africa, where they divided Africa amongst themselves. And that division is what has formed the continent today. And it could be argued that they still control the continent. And that's why you have turmoil in Burkina Faso, who says, hold on a minute, I do not want to use the French currency anymore. I do not want to pay a tax to France anymore. I want to be truly independent. So the West, they've been fighting back, because we all know this. Now, apart from Julius Nyerere, the Ethiopian emperor, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you about the screen. Yeah, we can hear you, can see.
Okay. I think I should just put my phone right here. Okay, let's just go now. I don't want any calls coming. So the Ethiopian emperor, Haile Selassie, at the time, argued for a gradualist approach. Things will cause a problem. I'm so sorry, please. Please give me a second. Okay. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, we can see. We can see the screen.
Okay, great. So Haile Selassie was more in favor of a gradualist approach. He was saying, you know, we need to take it little by little. Let's cooperate amongst ourselves. You know, let's take it gradually. So you had Kwame Nkrumah, who wanted the United States of Africa now, a single government, single military, single currency, and those who were called the gradualists, who were saying, let's take it bit by bit. And these guys were the ones who won. Okay, so OAU became that platform for actualizing, you know, cooperation amongst the sovereign countries, because not all African countries were independent at the time. But it was not moved on to become what is called a one continent or supranational national government. But that was what Kwame Nkrumah wanted. Now, let's move forward to 2013. That's 50 years on from May 25, 1963. OAU was no longer in existence. It changed the name to AU, African Union, in 2002. So in 2013, it marked the golden jubilee, of course, 50 years of the founding of the African Union. And the question came up again. 50 years after independence, 50 years after the formation of the African Union, what do we have to show for it? Of course, African countries had made some progress, you know, economic progress here and there. African nations came together to fight apartheid. You know, poverty had been reduced remarkably because we're not where we used to be, you know. And you had democracies across the continent in the year 2013. Africa had already hosted the World Cup, South Africa 2010. But of course, Africa had not achieved all that it set out to achieve in 1963. Okay, and I do remember when Ghana gained independence that Kwame Nkrumah famously said that we want to prove to the white man, or to the West, that the black man is capable of conducting his own affairs. So it was a mixed bag. Some saw it as a glass half full, some saw it as a glass half empty, But 50 years on, what did Africa have to show for independence? This is a continent that still exported its natural resources as raw materials and imported finished goods. And we're still doing that till today. I was thinking about the scramble, the race for solar energy in Nigeria and in other parts of Africa. In Nigeria in particular, because Nigeria has lithium, which is a very important, and other rare earth minerals, which is very important for the production of batteries that these solar, and we import all these batteries from China. So it's still happening till today. So 50 years on, 2013, from 1963 to 2013, Africa was faced with some challenges. There were civil wars across the continent. You know, you had genocide. Don't forget Rwanda had its own episode. You had famine. You had, you know, some countries in debt, failing economies. And of course, Africa was still borrowing from the West to fund its development. Okay, Africa was still seeing its brightest minds leave the shores of the continent to go to Europe and America. Okay, so when they sat down and looked at where are we? This is 2013, 50 years on. That hunger, that honesty to tell ourselves the truth that we have not achieved what we set out to achieve is what birthed Agenda 2063. African leaders basically said to themselves, look, 50 years after independence, we cannot sit here and celebrate what we have not achieved. We need to make a commitment to ourselves.
Are you there? Network or something. Are you there, Mr. Bartels?
making sure that this Agenda 2063 is a reality. Sorry about that, please. That is spread across a 10-year action plan. And of course, we're looking at the time frame of 2013 to 2063. What are the 7 aspirations? Let's go over that very quickly. I'll leave the theory and then we just look at the practical aspect, tell you what I feel. Okay, but number 1, of course, we're looking at the prosperous Africa. We're looking at an integrated continent. Okay, self-explanatory. We're looking at good governance. We're looking at a peaceful and secure continent. We're looking at cultural identity. We're looking at people-driven continent. And then Africa becoming a global player. These are very important pillars. And I'll just tell you what I think we need to do, to achieve this. And please, if you have any questions, you can write them down for me, and then of course after now we'll take, if there's any time, John will take questions. So now, prosperity. Africa is really a blessed continent. We have everything we need. Okay, everything we need for the continent to thrive. Okay, we have everything we need for the continent to thrive. Everything we need for Africa to be at the forefront of the global economy. Why do I say this? It's because most of these guys come into Africa, take the raw materials over to Europe, to America, and to Asia, and then they turn them into finished products and bring them back here. All right? The scramble for the partition of Africa happened many years ago, but it is still on till today. Okay? In Nigeria, the Chinese are here. All right? What are they doing here? The Chinese are here because of the raw materials. The Chinese are here because of the resources that they can take. If you go to northern Nigeria, it's well documented. You see the Chinese in the savannah, in the desert, in the forest, in the bushes, mining for rare minerals, mining for gold and lithium and all that. So we have everything we need to succeed. Africa is the richest continent in the world. Let's look at DR Congo, for instance, the Democratic Republic of Congo. A famous African whom I follow, Dr. Mensa Otabil, once said many years ago in the 90s that DR Congo is so rich that if you spit on the ground, a tree will grow there. You have everything. And this can be said about most of the countries in the continent. Okay. So for Africa to achieve this agenda, what they're saying is, okay, we need to have prosperity. Okay, we need to have prosperity, and it's very important for us to come together and look at what is that critical factor that has prevented Africa, as a very wealthy continent, from becoming prosperous. I know today I watched, I was going through, I came across a very interesting Instagram, account for a young Greek lady who has been visiting Nigeria. She put up some very beautiful pictures, and I was pained. Why was I pained? I was pained because I saw the video of children begging on the roadside. This is a European, okay, someone who just came to Nigeria as a tourist, and she filmed these children between the ages of maybe 5 and 16, all scrambling to get through her window with their hands, trying to beg or to get for 1,000 naira notes. It was so bad, the lady had to wind up. She was at the back seat, and they were all just, forcing their hands into begging, and it brought tears to my eyes. Okay, it brought tears to my eyes. So, what can we do on the level of multilateral cooperation? Multilateral cooperation for us to be properly integrated, for us to achieve Agenda 2063, for us to have peace and to have regional integration. We all know about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. This is, for me, I think, is the greatest vehicle to achieve this multilateral, cooperation, to achieve, in order to achieve peace and integration. But that prosperity, that peace, that integration, okay, because when you're talking about integration, it is not just cultural, it's more of an economic thing, where you have, if you live in South Africa, you can easily do business in Zambia, in Lagos. What we need is leadership. Leadership, very important. Leadership. If we don't get the leadership question right, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Africa cannot become a prosperous continent. If you don't get the leadership question right, we cannot have an integrated continent, a peaceful continent. So leadership is very, very important. We have the South Africa Development Community. We have the East African Community. We have the Central African Community. We have the Economic Community of West African States. Now, if you go through the charters that established all these sub-regional communities, economic communities, okay, multilateral communities, they're all very well written. I haven't read the SADC Charter. I haven't read that of the East African Community, or that of Central Africa, but I've read that of West Africa. I took time to read it, especially when Nigeria was contemplating sending troops into Niger. I had to look at everything, and yeah, very good things there. Okay, it could be better, but you see, everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership is very important. Okay, so for us to achieve these seven aspirations of Agenda 2063, we must get our leadership right. Let's look at what's happening between Nigeria and Niger. These are two countries that are brothers. Okay, these are two countries that are brothers, and you have people who reside in Nigeria, and in the morning they come to do work in Nigeria, and at night they go to sleep in Niger. In some communities, they don't even know where the border is. It's just the one Oyibo gave us. That's where we put it. I remember the former Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari famously said that if after retirement he can't find somewhere to stay in Nigeria, you go to Niger. Okay? But we see that brotherhood, that cooperation, has been put through very, very serious challenges in recent times as a result of what? Leadership. As a result of leadership. Am I audible, please? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
As a result of leadership. Very important. Okay. So we look at what's happening in Burkina Faso. We look at what's happening in Mali. These countries, because of lack of proper leadership at the ECOWAS level, decided to pull out from ECOWAS. If there was another leadership direction, as far as ECOWAS was concerned, I don't think that Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger would have pulled out of ECOWAS. But they felt that their interests were not protected. And as we speak right now, this idea of an integrated Africa a United Africa has been challenged. Because if these guys are going their way, putting up how are we going to have a United Africa? They don't even think that, they don't even trust the other countries who are saying, come, let's have a meeting to have, an Agenda 2063. Let's have Africa Continental Free Trade. They don't believe in these guys because they don't trust that the guys on the other side, on the ECOWAS side, are not working for the West. Who is working for France? Who is working for, as an African leader, for Britain? As an African leader, who is working for the United States of America? Who is working for Russia? Who is working for China? All these issues we're facing, seeing people going on the streets in Nigeria, waving Russian flags here and there, all these things are as a result of one issue, which is lack of leadership. So this is a challenge for us today as we look at rethinking the cooperation amongst African nations. What can we do to enhance our integration? Leadership is very important. So we have a prosperous Africa, an integrated continent, good governance, a peaceful and secure continent, a cultural identity, a people-driven continent, and become a global player. All these things cannot be actualized without leadership. Very important. Now, I want to ask, for those of you, listening to me today, when you hear Agenda 2063, what comes into your mind? Okay. Do you feel inspired? Do you feel empowered? Or do you feel it's just some sort of document, a slogan that people say, out there? Okay. Do you feel inspired that actually Africa can become what it's meant to be? I tell you what, I'm losing hope. The kind of hope that I had as a young man, I remember arguing with an older person when I was in secondary school that, Africa can become like America, the United States of America. I was arguing. And this older guy, I was in my early teens then, kept telling me that Africa can never become like the United States of America. And I was brimming with confidence. I said, we can do it. Today, that hope has been dimmed by poor leadership. That hope has been dimmed. It's not as it used to be. So it's very important that we get it right. Now, I went to South Africa late last year to attend the G20 leadership summit. So this was a gathering of the leaders of the top 20 economies in the world. The only African country there is South Africa, and South Africa had a presidency of the G20. So it's a group of 20 nations. So they hold the summit on a rotational basis. Now the United States of America has a presidency of the G20. And what happened between the United States of America and South Africa was well documented, of course, because of Elon Musk. Trump has decided to make Ramaphosa and the Black South Africans an enemy, feeling that maybe he can use his normal tactics to cause, I don't know, maybe put white people back in power. I don't know what he wants to achieve. So Donald Trump did not attend, but it was interesting to see how the South Africans organized that summit. And it was interesting to see Africa show that it can, lead the world. I was proud. But that's not what I'm looking at. On my way back, I flew by Kenyan Airways because they had the best deal for me at the time I booked my flight. So I went by Kenyan Airways. And on our way, because of course it's Kenyan Airways, we did a transit in Nairobi. An hour or so, we went down and we moved on to next flight to take us to Johannesburg. On my way back, we had another transit, still at Nairobi. And this is the benefit of having your own national carrier. You can bring people to your country. And it was meant to last about, let's say 20 hours. About 20 hours. I said, well, what am I going to do for 20 hours? I can't sit at the airport. And then I remembered, I'd read somewhere that the Kenyan President William Ruto had signed, that Kenya was visa-free, the visa to enter. So I walked up to the desk. I told them, okay, is it visa-free? They said, yes. Where am I coming from? I said, okay, I'm coming from G20. What am I? I'm a journalist. I showed them my pass, my ID card, and all this kind of stuff. And I walked into Nairobi, which used to be $100 visa on arrival, right? Without paying a dime. Okay, without paying a dime. And I went in there, got a taxi, changed some money at the airport, got some money, got a taxi, and found a hotel and passed my night. I didn't have to sleep at the airport. And then the next day I went into town, met some family friends, they bought me ugali, which my wife has been telling me about. So I was looking forward to eating ugali, learned a bit about the culture of the country, which I hadn't been to before. I mean, it's been on my bucket list, but I didn't have a chance. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I saw a post by the CNN reporter who's a Kenyan. I can't remember his name right now, whom I also met in South Africa. Now, what did he say? That he had to pay $90 to get into Nigeria. He had to pay $90, and he didn't find it funny at all that he had to pay $90 to get into Nigeria. Just a week ago, I had some family friends, Kenyans, who wanted to come into Nigeria. And so we had to write to Nigerian embassy in Kenya a long letter, because that's the formality. We had to include all our documents. These family members have to give bank statements. And we have to promise that when they come, they won't be a burden to the Nigerian state. And we're going to make sure that we accompany them when they are going at all times. They are not going to take up any employment. They are not going to work anywhere. And they are going to leave details of their movement. It was grueling. The day for what they were coming for was approaching. They had not gotten their visa. We kept making calls, calling people here and there, trying to find out what's going on, why they delay. They had to push their flight back. At the end of the day, they came a few days late. It was stressful. And I said to myself, why should this be? Why should this be? I mean, I went into Nairobi and I had to change dollars to Kenyan shillings without paying a dime. And I spent money there. Money went into the Kenyan economy. The taxi drivers, the Uber drivers I used got paid. The hotel I stayed in got paid. The people I gave tips got paid. Where I went to eat, they got paid. I went to Masai Market to buy some things for my wife and my mother-in-law. They got paid, and that money went straight to Kenya's pocket. So what I think is we really need to look at how the country governments on the continent can open up the continent. Right? That is where we need to start from. Remove all visa barriers. Remove all visa restrictions. Make it very easy for Africans to land in Nigeria, to land in other African countries. I'm happy that countries like Ghana have followed suit. Okay, of course we have the ECOWAS advantage where, you know, if you are an ECOWAS citizen, you don't need to pay or get a visa to get into Ghana, into Cote d'Ivoire, into Nigeria. But other African countries need to. You know, at a point I was asking myself, is this you know, when they're asking you, okay, they're telling you need to submit a bank statement, you know, it's like we in Nigeria here, we're enjoying something from the government gives us, you know. So when you're going to UK, for instance, because the government gives people some welfare benefits and all that, they want to be sure you're not going to come and use it because they don't want to spend on you. But yeah, what are we getting? What are we getting? So remove the visa restrictions. Take it out. Okay. We have the likes of Seychelles, visa free. Republic of Benin, if you're an African citizen, visa free. The Gambia, I think the Gambia is also visa free to all Africans. Okay. Rwanda also did some recently to all Africans visa free. All right. So we need that. That I think is the key. All right. That I think is the key to ensure that we have greater integration. And I think Nigeria needs to get on that train, on that board, and say, hey, if you're coming into my country as an African citizen, I will not ask you to apply for a visa. Okay. So today being International Day of Multilateralism for diplomacy and peace is a day for reflection. Okay. While we're talking about redefining our models, while we're talking about redefining our models, our multilateral models, we need to also reflect. Rethinking, you know, our multilateral models, we also need to reflect. Integration can only be achieved if we break down the barriers of movement from one part of the continent to the other. The world is changing as we speak. It's not the same world that it was. Okay? There are geopolitical realignments all over the world. We can see what is happening in the Strait of Hormuz right now that is causing people to have a rethink. If Africa can position itself properly, we're going to have an advantage. There are serious geopolitical realignments. Are leaders thinking in this direction? Are they having geopolitical think tanks, geopolitical experts come together, academics to say, as we're having this realignment with what's happening in Iran right now, what do we need to do as Africa? How are we going to approach it? The world is changing. Look at Canada. Recently realigned, and they looked at everything and they said, okay, we want to shift closer to China. So is Africa going to sit down and wait?
Mr. Bartos?
Yes. How many more minutes do I have?
Okay, you may check your in your chat box. Yes, I'll just drop them.
I can't move. Just tell me so that
Okay. So if you can use maybe 3 minutes to wrap up, then we'll take a few questions. Probably two persons will have them when they're asking the questions.
Okay. So what is the Africa we truly want? Is it an Africa that continues to respond, okay, to global systems designed elsewhere? Or are we looking at an Africa that defines its own path? Okay, strategically, we're a continent under pressure. Okay, right now, we need to now decide between sovereignty and supranationalism. The last person that we could look up to push this certain agenda was Muammar Gaddafi, but he's no longer with us. So Africa has a huge potential, but we need to define the path, our own path, with confidence, with strategy, very important, and collectively. Look at the figures here. 55 member states in AU, one of the world's largest multilateral bodies, the world's largest continent by far, one of the largest, 8 regional blocks that I mentioned earlier, and a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars. What are we going to do about this? Okay, so this Agenda 2063, as we're talking about multilateral cooperation for peace and integration, we need to have strategy, rethink what we have right now, redefine it rather. Okay, so Agenda 2063 is more than a policy document. It's a declaration of intent, a vision of an Africa that is peaceful and secure, politically integrated, economically strong, and globally influential. And having that vision is not enough, because we need action, we need alignment, and we need cooperation. Okay? It's very important. And if we can get our leadership right, for this Agenda 2063 to succeed, then we need to reimagine this thing we call multilateralism, how different countries work together. We need to reimagine it. Okay? And what does this mean? It means that we need to strengthen the regional institutions, ECOWAS, SADC, and so on and so forth. We need to look inwards and have African-led solutions. And then we need to look at ensuring that the partnerships that we engage in align with African priorities. I want to say this: let's stop going cap in hand to the West. Let's stop lining up when France calls our leaders, when the Chinese call us for African summit, the Americans, Brazilians, Japanese, Canadians call us for, and we line up. Let's look inwards. If you want greater integration and peace, let's look inwards. We have a young population brimming with creativity. And I know Mrs. Aniche knows more about this because they have a tech event. You have young people brimming with ideas, waiting to be unleashed. We need to reimagine multilateralism. We need to look inwards and take ownership. Now, ownership, John, please permit me to say this, it's not isolation. Okay? So that's the first thing. Secondly, we need a shift on integration. Okay? Like I said, free movement of people and goods and services, take away visas, take away borders. Let's improve intra-African trade, and that's where the that's the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement comes in. And I want to really commend the government of Nigeria under the leadership of President Bola Tinubu, driven by the current Minister of Trade and Industry, who made giant strides in ensuring that Nigeria is not left behind, with this African Continental Free Trade Agreement. Thirdly, we must redefine our partnerships. Okay, we must redefine our partnerships. We have the resources, we have the potential, we have the talent, but what has been lacking in times past is equity in engagement. All right, so we need to shift from aid to investment, from dependence to collaboration, and from hierarchy to partnership. I have a lot to say and so little time. Please permit me to say this also. Speaking about about peace, finally. Without peace, there can be no integration. Without peace, there can be no investment. And without peace, there can be no sustainable development. And this is what Nigeria is suffering today. Okay? So we need to build proactive peace building systems. I would have loved to go deeper into this, but there is no time. Finally, please, I want to speak to our leaders. Finally, this is the last thing I'll say. The most powerful force that this continent has for peace and integration and for development is the youth population. Okay? It's the youth population. Africa has the youngest population in the world. We need to create systems that empower youth. All right. We need to create systems that support innovation, because this Agenda 2063 is for them. So as I close, please let me leave you with this. The Africa we want is not a gift from multilateral institutions. It is a continent we build through deliberate diplomacy, strategic communications, and the unyielding will of its people. It is only possible if we are willing to rethink how we cooperate, how we partner, and how we lead. So I want to call on our leaders to devote funds to African peace and end external security dependency. I want to call on African leaders to accelerate the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement so that integration can be possible for all its citizens, a reality. Okay? The multilateral institutions need to be reformed. And finally, we need to invest in strategic communications. We need to own the narrative. Most of what we are seeing and what we believe about America is what? Communications. About China is what? Communications. And I want to end by saying Kwame Nkrumah was right. Africa must unite. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so very much, Mr. Bartos. Thanks a lot for that, this presentation. Wonderful, quite, insightful. And I must say, I mean, this is more like, is an introspection, like I emphasized in my my address when I was speaking, that in as much as we're thinking global, I mean, talking about the West and all, we have to bring it back to ourselves here as Africans, all right? And you've just done everything, that you needed to do, talking about that particular topic, Agenda 2063. Thank you so very much once again. Okay, very quickly, we want to find out if you have questions. Are there questions you have for Mr. Bartos? Please indicate in the comment section or raise your hand, and then I'll see how we can call you out to ask your questions. Please, if you have questions, raise your hand. Okay, Dr. Mercy Bello has a question or question. Dr. Mercy Bello, the virtual stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. What a profound keynote address. What a profound message. Well done, Kofi Batas. We've not heard from you in a while. We hear your very special voice on radio. So I didn't know you've moved to Lagos. I was quite impressed. You told my line of thoughts, what I've been talking about. We need to think Africa, grow Africa, and everything lies within us in Africa. And when you mentioned leadership, I recently got into politics because I discovered that regardless of what we say, everywhere it falls on leadership. And it will be amazing. It will amaze you to know that when you sit with most of these political elites, the people deciding our future, the people that picks the candidate that represents us, it's appalling. It's really, really appalling. How do we get strategic leadership? How do we get people that are exposed and know what governance, what humanity is all about? If the very people that present these candidates are the very ones, the barest minimum, the barest, that are motivated by just small money. Give them a little, they say, yes, we will die, you are the one, even when you know nothing about leadership. So these are the challenges. So I will admonish every one of us. Beyond the talk, how can we be involved? How can we get into leadership? As a technical aide, I had to go to my state to become a technical aide to some of the commissioners in my state. And believe you me, it's an eye-opener. I've been in advocacy and development for more than 25 years. But stepping into that space, I saw a different terrain. I saw something that I felt I knew over the years, that I know nothing when it comes to governance. I'm telling you, quite revealing. So when you see technocrats fail in government, you know the reason. It's beyond that. I tell them, I jokingly say this, even when you have a PhD in diplomacy and governance, come into government in Nigeria, whether the state government, the federal government, you see it's a totally different ballgame. A system where you are set up to fail, immediately you step in because you know nothing about it. And no matter the books that are written, nothing prepares you for that shock. And these are the conversation. When you also mentioned about the Chinese, I came back yesterday, my flight from Egypt, guess what? Apart from Nigeria, 80% of the people that were on that flight were the Chinese. Where are they coming to? Nigeria. They can't even speak English, but there's something in Nigeria they are coming to. Go to Ogun State, down towards from Mowe, down before the Redeem, the Chinese have bought over that hectares of land going to Ogun State. There's something that is in this land that we, as citizens, are not seeing. So when we talk about leadership, I tend to agree with you that we need to do more, but we can't, the talk alone is not enough. Every one of us that has the goodwill, that has passion for this nation, we must look for ways to be part of the leadership of this nation. Because when we keep leaving it in their hands, we say it's difficult. Or when you get there, they are going to do a lot of things. But until we get in there, we cannot change the narrative. This is what I was so impressed with your presentation. Thank you so much for towing that line. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Dr. Mercy Belobu. It's a pleasure, to meet you and talk to you here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy, for that contribution. Yeah, Mr. Chris Uguajo, please understand that you have stayed back where back and contribute to the conversation. So sorry for that. I'm so sorry for that. Mr. Chris, is it possible you unmute your device now? And Mr. Nathalia, after Mr. Chris, please. Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Chris, thank you so much. Mr. Chris is the head of operations, Hedge Education. Mr. Chris, the virtual stage is yours, please.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and then happy International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy. I would say that I joined the conversation right from the start, and I have never been this awed to see the extent at which these issues are burning. And I want to start by saying a very big thank you to Dccc. That's the conference that John Best Uche and Tabitha Akko has been pushing. The maiden conference in Port Harcourt was an eye-opener, and then since then I've been following the events of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference. Today, I have been so enriched by presentations from Prof. and from Mr. Kofi Battels. And then goodwill messages have also added a lot of flesh to the idea I had about multilateralism. I know that the direct opposite of multilateralism is unilateralism. And then come to see how much that we are saying about multilateralism, whereas what is being pushed or what is being practiced or embraced is unilateralism, like one of our contributors pushed it. When someone say I'm a nationalist or nationalism is an indirect way of saying I'm proud or I'm nationally proud. And today I would go out of this webinar with two things. One, that silence and negotiation is always are going to be the tools to support multilateralism. I mean, when I mean silence to issues around unilateralism, we will have to silence it much and speak more about multilateralism. And we'll have to be open to negotiation. We'll have to have the courage to negotiate. I think those are the two things I'm leaving this webinar with. I see many of the things happening in our space as a way that the world is asking for a different thing. Right from the times when we were inundated with the news of the Britain trying to exit, and to the point where we are now, where every nation is trying to set up their own strength, call it nuclear war powers or whatever. They're all trying to show their different strengths. I would say in my own little corner, I will continue to support where there is negotiation so that we can stay together, we can coexist, and then we can thrive together. For the presentations that Mr. Kofi Patel shared, especially the last part, I would want to see that same kind of Nigeria. I would want to see that kind of Nigeria where we are open and then we have our own rights and grounds to be able to go to negotiations with those rights in our hands instead of with a begging plate in our hands. So thank you, John Best and Tabitha, who consistently reached out to me till today. I will say thank you too for all that you all do in DCC. And as the conversations continue even after now, trust me, one of these days we will refer to these kind of conversations as the brooding places where the things we later find or the later had started or were nursed. And then I would be saying that for the rest of our speakers, okay, if possible, after this conversation, if there's a way to share with the organizers your slides or your script so that they can circulate, it will be a rich resource for us to come back to anytime. I think that's one request I had in my mind while I was listening through the presenters. Thank you, John Best, and thank you to everyone. Good evening once again.
All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Chris Ajoku. Thank you so much. We would have gone straight up to the mediator, Nathalia Odidika, the one I referred to as my learned colleague. I mean, for some of us, I'm a learned colleague. I mean, by virtue of association. Yeah. So she's one of my learned colleagues. I would have come straight up to you now, but Dennis has to go on air in the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So, Barrister Nathalia, kindly give us a minute or two while Mrs. Dennis, all right, Dennis, thank you so much till this time. And everybody on this call, please, we sincerely appreciate you for staying through. Thank you so much. Dennis, your message. So Dennis works with the Nigeria Info. She is a media personality and yes, a journalist. So she has to make a contribution to this speak. Thank you.
Thank you. The person that wanted to go, she can go on ahead. I'll wait.
Okay, are you sure? Yeah, I understand you have to be on air shortly. Okay. So, mediator Nathalia Odidika is Esezebo, my learned colleague, Barrister Nathalia. Over.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Barrister Rafael.
Yes, can you hear me? Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Very
Yes, we can. I can hear you from my end.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. Really excited to be here.
Very good.
Yes.
Yes, very clearly. We can hear you.
Okay, so it's a great joy for me to join you all on this important occasion as we mark the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Now, we live in a time where no nation, no institution, and no leader can truly thrive in isolation. Nobody can thrive in isolation. The challenges before us, as we all know, we have conflict, we have inequality, issues around climate change, economic instability, especially as concerns Africa. These challenges do not recognize borders. And so our solutions must also transcend them. This is the essence of what we are discussing today. Simply the understanding that our shared humanity demands shared responsibility. But beyond structures and agreements, what truly drives progress is collaborative leadership, a leadership that listens before it speaks, the one that seeks to understanding before conclusion and values partnership over power. It is this kind of leadership that transforms dialogue into action and diversity of voices into strength. Now, equally very vital is effective communication. In diplomacy, excuse me, in diplomacy and development, communication is not merely about speaking. It's about building trust, about managing our differences and creating those spaces where even the most difficult conversations can lead to meaningful outcomes. Words, when used with intention and integrity. Hello, can you still hear me?
Yes, please, very clearly.
Hello?
Yes,
You're very
very
much
clearly we
audible,
can.
man.
Okay, sorry. Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, let me proceed then. So, like I said, it's this kind of leadership that transforms dialogue into action and a diversity of voices into strength. Equally very important is effective communication. In diplomacy and development, communication is not merely about speaking, it's about building trust. It's about managing our differences and creating spaces where even the most difficult conversations can lead to meaningful outcomes. When words are used with intention and integrity, this can de-escalate tensions, build divides, and then, inspire collective action. Now, as we reflect today, let us remember that peace is not a passive state. It is a continuous, deliberate effort. You can't say peace is just one, minute, everything's okay. You must continue because somewhere, sometime, war, troubles, conflicts will always arise. So that's why peace is a continuous and deliberate effort. So sustainable development is not an isolated goal. It is a shared journey. Diplomacy is not reserved for states alone. It is a skill we must all embody in our daily interactions. Like I always say, that society, stems from the family. The family is the smallest unit of society. So everything starts from the family and skyrockets into the society and the world at large. And so the skill must, be seen in our daily interactions with the people we encounter every day. If we commit to working together, to leading together, and communicating with purpose, we'll not only shape better policies, we will shape a more peaceful and sustainable world. And so today, I charge all of us to be intentional in our communication, in our relationships, in all that we do, because Africa deserves a peaceful continent. And that responsibility is in all of us, not just the state, not just the politicians, but each and every one of us starts with our family, starts with our relationships, it starts our interaction with the next door neighbor. Thank you very much. Hello, John Best, can you hear me? Tabitha?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Barrister Nathalia happens to be, yes, can you hear me? Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference. She was to be the chair for the simulation, the Model United Nations simulation session. All right. And something, happened. Something happened that, we were so worried. And we are glad that it just ended the way it ended. Because he wouldn't have been, we would not be talking about this now. All right. So, but then after that, she's been there, all there for the initiative. Barrister Nathalia will reach out. Say, okay, let's talk about this. And then like that. In fact, she's currently, you said you were actually at burial, right? You had to leave the burial ground to, to be able to make your this message, drop this message now, right? And that's how, supportive Barrister Nathalia has been. She's a barrister, practicing, like you'll be hearing me say. All right. For those of us that are in Port Harcourt, Barrister Nathalia, I hope we'll have you in Port Harcourt shortly.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome you. All right. And for those of us in Port Harcourt going to Lagos soon, Abuja going to Lagos, and even outside of Nigeria coming to Port Harcourt, going to Lagos, we'll have Barrister Nathalia will be happy to meet up with us and all of that, right? Thank you so very much, my learned colleague, for that beautiful goodwill message. I think I wanted to share the flyer where some of us were together in that. This is it. I'm trying to share it. Yeah. Okay. This is it. Okay. The next is Mrs. Dennis Wallo. Mrs. Dennis Wallo, kindly speak to us. Let's get to Wallo. Are you there? Did it? Hold on. He's not here. Oh, she's off. Is she off? Oh,
Can
okay,
you hear me?
yeah.
Can we all hear me?
All right. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. To all the thought leaders that have spoken, the experts, my colleagues. There was Choma Ezenwafo on this dial, and then, of course, Kofi Bartels. So, of course, the convener, Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, the one I usually call JBU, and his wonderful team. And to everyone joining us, shout out to Dr. Mercy Bello, the professor that was here earlier. My sincerest condolences on the demise of your brother. Let me start with this. If the past few years have taught us anything, it is that our world is too connected for us to keep acting disconnected. You know how something happens, I give a practical example, something happens in the north, and we down south are not concerned, maybe because it's far off, or maybe because the numbers did not accumulate to names that were probably our relatives, our brothers, sisters, and loved ones. The world is too connected. And here in Nigeria, that reality is not abstract. It's lived every single day. I say so because as someone who has been at the forefront of conversations on radio for over 12 years, I don't just speak. I listen. I watch. Every day, Nigerians calling, they send messages, they share their realities. There's a rising cost of living. There's a tough economic climate. There's fluctuating oil prices, of course, driven by global tensions and world powers. The daily hustle to stay afloat. There is increasing cases of insecurity and the recent kidnapping. If you remember the GEO story, there is the frustrations, the resilience. It's all there. It's very visible to the blind and audible to the deaf. It's raw. It's unfiltered. And what that shows us is this. Our challenges they're not isolated. They're not any different from what's happening in South Africa. They're not any different from what is happening in the Middle East. They're not any different from what is happening in the other far end of the world. They are layered, they are interconnected, and most importantly, they are deeply human, which is why multilateralism cannot remain a global word. I mean, I listened through the beginning and I saw in reality, a lot of us even struggle with pronouncing the word. It doesn't feel distant anymore. It has become a lived practice that we collaborate across governments, we collaborate across the private sector, communities, and even in our everyday interactions, civil society groups, what the Dccc is doing, because progress cannot happen in the silos, unfortunately, and solutions cannot come from one voice alone. I mean, I was so excited when I heard Dr. Mercy mention that she had to delve into politics, because at some point, we cannot wait for people to do what we can actually do. Now, when we talk about collaborative leadership, this is where I think it actually hits home. We need leadership at the end of the day. We need leadership that listens to the voices on the streets, not just the voices in the boardrooms, not just the voices of their followers or those people hailing them and standing on mandates. I mean, leadership that understands that policy must meet people where they are. Leadership that is bold enough to engage, to come down to the level of the people, to actually understand what is. And leadership that is humble enough to partner, because like I said from the beginning, we can't do this in isolation, because the truth is, peace is not just about the absence of conflict. It is about whether people feel heard, whether systems feel fair, and whether there is a genuine sense of shared direction. So we are not just seated in Nigeria and somebody in the White House is saying that they are going to storm in here, guns are blazing. No. So as we mark this day, let it not just be another global observance, world this day, world that day. Let it be a reminder that every conversation matters, that every voice counts, and that the bridges we build today through dialogue and collaboration will define the future we all step into. And then, on air, I always say, let the conversations, let the talk for development continue. Let the conversations continue beyond radio. And today, as I give my goodwill message, I will say, let the right conversations continue, like this one we are having, the ones that move us forward, the inclusive ones, the ones that carry us together. And I believe if that happens, then we are closer. We are very close to achieving that goal. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Thank you so much for that contribution there. Indeed, let the right conversation happen. We cannot, overemphasize the place of the right conversations, all right? And we're glad to be part of that, all right? Championing the right conversation, like you've said, all right? Okay, we're winding to a close. We're bringing the event to a close very shortly. For those that will stay back, would have played some videos, but I mean, you get to know see some of the things we've done. I mean, our past event, we've had the first edition of the conference in Port Harcourt. We had the second in Lagos. We're planning for Abuja. All right, the third edition of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, and we are using this opportunity to actually call for partners, supporters in any form, all right? However you think you can support the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, all right? In any form, we are very open to that partnership. We are very open to that support. Okay, the team is always ready for that. What is ahead of us right now is the Abuja conference. The next is Port Harcourt, which will be next year. After Abuja this year, we'll have a bigger and a better experience here in Port Harcourt next year. Okay, and we need the support, every form of support we can actually get from you as partners in progress, partners in development, which is part of what this conversation emphasizes. Okay, we have Mr. Jonathan Morgan. Mr. Jonathan Morgan, I think you have not mistaken, he happens to be part of the conference in Lagos. That was Friday, November 28th, 2025. Mr. Jonathan Morgan, would you want to say something? Would you want to say something? You've been part of part of it physically, and here you are virtually commemorating the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Would you want to say something, Mr. Jonathan? Okay, I think he's not able to. Okay, yeah.
Good evening, all.
A very good evening to you, Mr.
Good evening. I want to quickly just mention, I won't take so much time. I just want to mention that has been a very great conversation on here this evening. Everyone who has spoken has brought perspective to the conversation we've had so far. And it's really so great listening to such people, great minds, bright minds, and having to soak in so much information and knowledge from all of the people who have spoken. I'll just quickly chip that to drive this conversation further, just like Dr. Patel said, and every other person who has spoken, Dr. Mercy also advocated that we carry this conversation through politicians and leadership at all levels. I want to also advocate for that. And what Dccc is doing, we should drive it more with youth involvement. Because whether we like it or not, Dr. Mason mentioned something which was really very sacrosanct to me, that some of the conversations we're having may even outlive us. Some of us will not be here when we actually get to see the result of these conversations that we're having at this time. So I think it's a critical factor to also involve the young people in this sort of conversation, and maybe also cascade it to their levels, to maybe school settings or to events that have a lot of young people in attendance, so that they can also hear these things. And like the world is going, a lot of global is fast becoming a global sitting room, no more even a village. So a lot of interaction is ongoing between a lot of young minds who are collaborating on a lot of things that cross boundaries and national boundaries and all of that, geographical boundaries also. I followed Artemis 2, the recent space exploration, and all of the 4 astronauts that were on that flight. When they got back, I followed all of their interviews and everything. And if there's anything that I got from that mission and looking at all of that, is basically that if there's any point in the human existence where we should collaborate more and see ourselves as one and do more together, it's at this time. One of the astronauts said that if you cross this sphere and you go outside of this place, you look back and you look at the world and it just gets to you and you begin to think, why do we do the things that we do inside of that tiny little space? So I want to advocate that to drag the young people or the younger people into this conversation ongoing. And also, like Dr. Mercy advocated, we should find ways to reach politicians, leadership at all levels, especially, and I must mention this, especially the church. Because, whatever happens, the church is not outside of this whole conversation, because it has its role to play also. So I think we should find ways to reach this set and get them involved in this conversation. I've enjoyed myself so very much. I've learned, and I really have been touched by all of the sayings and everything that everyone has put in this evening. Thank you so very much, John Best, and your team for all that you do. I am looking forward to the Abuja conference. If I'll be able to attend, if I find the time, I'll be able to attend. If not, I'll be looking forward to maybe another Lagos invasion, maybe next year. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, Mr. Jonathan. Thanks a lot. Abuja, yeah, we're coming. Lagos, again, yes. You can pull us you can decide to say, please come to Lagos, leave Port Harcourt, and we'll come. Except that Port Harcourt people will come after you. But that's thank you so much.
All right, we can package that. We can put it together.
All right. All right. So I see Blessing Anna Felix, because you're on this call. Would you want to say something? Then Oluwaseyi Dayo, an amazing young man. He was there in Lagos, he was there in Port Harcourt, he was here in Port Harcourt, he was there in Lagos for the for inaugural and the second edition, right, conference. Yeah, Oluwaseyi Dayo, you want to say something? Yes, a minute or two. Olua, I know you're working, but you want to say something.
All right. Yes, actually, first off, I'm going to say good evening to everybody. And I would say a very big thank you to you, sir, for this wonderful conference, actually, that has been on since last year. And just to say, just not to waste much time here, what really stood out for me tonight was the fact that the majority of the speakers kept saying one particular thing: let the right conversations continue. Like, it cannot just be overemphasized. You just need to let the right conversations continue. And just like what Mr. Jonathan said, he said the youth should be dragged into this. Like, we need to take this thing to them, because the majority of Nigerian youths don't really understand what diplomacy or what communication even is. So that's just what majorly stood out for me. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Okay, Blessing Felix, are you still there? And then Mary Ito Lima. I think she's
Hi, good evening,
she's
sir.
a diplomacy scholar, right? She's a scholar. Yeah, I think doing studying diplomacy and international relations. Mary, would you want to say something? Now, if you would want to see this content after now, please visit our YouTube channel, our official YouTube channel, Business and Corporate Communications. Go play it again, and you see other content there that you would find interesting. Anna Felix, where are you joining us from? And Blessing?
Good evening, sir. Good
Is
evening,
Blessing there?
everybody. Yes, this is
All right,
Blessing
Blessing.
speaking.
All right.
Good evening, sir, and good evening to everybody still on the call. First of all, thank you for this the opportunity and for organizing this webinar. It's really impactful. I'm currently studying international relations at master's level diplomacy. So I joined from the beginning, 6 p.m. I've been on this call and I've learned so much,
Wow,
like
that's
so much.
interesting.
Thank you. Yes. So sometimes when I
Thank you,
talk to
Blessing,
people,
for joining. And
Yes. So sometimes when I talk to people about communication and diplomacy, our word today is people have emphasized isolation, be alone, that kind of narrative. But I do tell them that no, that's not it. Relationship matters, and even the relationship is communication because it helps reduce conflict and all that. So I've learned something this evening. We cannot solve global issues in isolation, but when we come collectively, we can solve them. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Blessing. Anna Felix, students master's level, diplomacy and international relations. Thank you. Olufisayo Sunday. Olufisayo Sunday, the name is quite strange, but you've been on the call right from time. Olufisayo, you want to say something? Okay, if Olufisayo is not active to say a word, then we'll have to call it a wrap here. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, for being part of the conversation. And Mr. Bartos, okay, Olufisayo, you want to say something? Okay.
Just want to appreciate the organizer program.
Line is breaking though.
I started playing the Can you hear that?
Okay, go on, let's hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just go on.
Okay,
a minute. Manage. Oh no. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. So sorry. So sorry. I think the network is not very favorable to end. So sorry. Message, if you're not connected to us community, please drop on IG, on Facebook, if you are not in our WhatsApp community already. And Blessing, are you in the community? Blessing, what is another active here? All right. So once again, thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
I mean,
Mr. Bartos, we're sincerely grateful to you for you're in the community. Oh, super, super. Please, would appreciate you, keep engaging and all of that, right? So, Mr. Bartos, thank you so very much for, sparing us your precious time, speaking to us, out of your busy schedules. You gave us this time. We truly appreciate you. Thank you so, so very much, sir.
Thank you, John Best, for having me, and for putting together such a very timely and beautiful event. I want to just speak a word of encouragement to you, to keep the vision burning in your heart, because the future is bright. Also to thank all the panelists who were here and all those who also attended. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, sir. Deborah, who just joined. Are you just joining, or you've been on the call before now? Okay, unmute yourself, and you're already unmuted. Say something, Deborah. Let's hear you. You have a word for us? All right, Deborah is not active. Deborah is not active. Okay, so as a way of wrapping up, I would like for us to see this video. All right, some of these videos you already find on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. You'll find them on our YouTube channel. All right, I want to just play some of them. Basically, what people are saying about
You actually shared the simulation process. What would you say it felt like?
It was amazing. First of all, it was my first time to be in that kind of the simulation, and it was rewarding. I loved that. I also learned on the job. It was beautiful, and now I'm looking forward to more sessions like that.
Already, you feel like a diplomat.
Yes, I am. If they don't tell you, you know, we know.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, what would you say the stance of those various countries who were in the council? what would you say their responses and how it really works in real life? How would you put it?
It tells you that we all have problems, we all require solutions, we all need to communicate.
Sure.
Right? We're basically trying to show the world how it happens in the world. And the sad part is it takes a long time to get to sustainable solutions.
Longer, yeah.
Yeah, so it's what happens in life. So we're just replicating life, basically.
And it's been an amazing opportunity to get to do that.
It has. I mean, I didn't expect it to be this exciting, right?
No, what do you mean the word exciting?
Yes, it was exciting.
So what was really exciting about it? Tell me.
Okay, so I would speak from my position.
Sure.
As the chair, my job was the easiest, really. It was.
You can say that again.
Yes, it was. It was just
position of power. Just ask.
Yes, it was in a position of power, but I did the least work. Everybody had a position, everybody had a recommendation. Mine was just to time them and say, okay, do this and do that. But it was beautiful just being in that space and seeing, how I could use that power and just hear the positions of people who represented countries.
Hello, Mom. Tabere. You're welcome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tonya Briggs. I'm an influencer, a content creator, and a media creative based in.
I like to.
Yesterday, the 24th of April 2025, which is celebrated every year since 2018. To celebrate the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Today is the 25th of April 2025, and today we are gathered here for the maiden edition of the Diplomatic and Corporate Communications Conference 2025.
Our words. The tools that we don't watch as most likely the things that makes the diplomacy in the first place degenerate into troubles or into wars or into fight. We can actually move from diplomacy and end it in diplomacy without having the war or the problem in between.
Skills that here is for us to understand what is diplomacy in these aspects. One of it is this: you must have intelligence gathering, you must have habits, know what to say and how to say it. That is your skill as a diplomat.
I mean, we knew who we were going to speak to for various reasons. We knew the right groups, organizations that if we engage this person would influence this person. We knew that the UK government at the time cared so much about. Today we're so excited. We're so glad that the maiden edition of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference has been achieved. And of course, the idea is to build diplomatic leaders through communication skills, through multilateral engagement. It has been good. It's been from one good session to another good session, different speakers coming from different angles to touch on diplomacy and its application and how to be diplomatic in all situations. It was amazing. First of all, it was my first time to be in that kind of the simulation, and it was rewarding. I loved that I also learned on the job.
So to be able to be part of this type of simulation where nations who are at war with each other